Nagoro Kaito explains that he is a cat. He says he was once a human, possibly died from being hit by a car at 150 kilometers per hour, and now begins a quiet life as a cat. He says he found himself in some kind of white space when he opened his eyes. Nagoro Kaito is silent. He is surprised that he has become striped. He says Paws is surprised by the new sensations from his paws. Nagoro Kaito says that this is not the most important thing now, and remembers how he proved to everyone that there is no life after death, but he himself thinks about it. He talks about the Buddhist concept of a person being reborn as an animal depending on the life he lived, and the other explains that the other person misunderstood. She asks who he is, explains that the answer is obvious. He is surprised and thinks that she is his grandmother who died 4 years ago, and apologizes for such a joke, assuming that she is a goddess. He says that he doesn't really care whether a person lives or dies, and explains that something in life didn't go according to plan, and the other thanks him and asks what other points he has. Nagoro Kaito says he saved a cat that was almost hit by a car and confirms it. He tells that on the night he got very drunk, there was a cat in the road that was supposed to be reborn, but he died instead and someone has to take his place, and the cat asks him to wait when he says that the boss is angry because of his attempts, but his colleagues note his care for the cat. He is surprised that he has to transform into a cat, and she explains that he was a human and asks if she explained it clearly. Nagoro Kaito says he feels sorry for humans, but he doesn't understand why the gods would pay special attention to cats, and wonders why humans are allowed to be reincarnated. He says he's not going to answer stupid questions and explains that it's now possible to be reborn in another world as a cat. But it's a right, not an obligation, and it can be passed on to another. Nagoro Kaito explains that the mind will sink into the abyss and disappear, and asks what the interlocutor will choose, and then says that there is no choice. He chooses to be reborn and explains that a place with magic and low technology, where cats are loved, will give him bonuses and abilities to achieve his goals. He says goodbye to Nagoro Kaito and wishes to enjoy his next life as a cat. He says he didn't touch the pudding in the fridge, and the other man asks the boss to wait and is surprised by the cowardice of adults, while he notices that they are having fun. He says that he found himself in the body of a cat without explanation or clothing, and explains that reincarnation can be considered as being thrown out somewhere in the mountains. He explains that cats don't wear clothes and reasons that he's more used to walking on 2 legs, so there shouldn't be a problem. Nagoro Kaito explains that he sees blue skies, beautiful green trees, and bright red flowers, even though he heard that cats see the world in black and white, and suggests that he can see everything like a human. He explains that he is a man in cat skin, who has lived a city life without the skills to survive in the wild, and is surprised that he will have to start from scratch without knowing what wild cats eat. Nagoro Kaito explains that you first need to set your priorities, then figure out if it's livable, and above all, find a place to sleep. He says that we need to go to the human village. He explains that he can walk, but his steps are small and he is unlikely to be able to run for long. Then he thinks about whether he can fly or do something useful, and remembers that someone mentioned magic. Nagoro Kaito tells him to show up and calls him Flame. Then he shouts and gets ready to act. He says that a simple cat would have no use for such abilities. She asks where he is from, and he explains that he has an interesting coloring, and she is surprised that he is a cat. Nagoro Kaito explains that due to some circumstances he is now a cat and was a human in another world, and she notices that he is an unusual cat, standing on his hind legs and talking, and asks what world he is from. She asks if it's fashionable to turn into cats near the Risol Mountains, and he explains that it's impossible and understands the situation. Nagoro Kaito explains that he was transported from another world and is confused, and she explains that it is dangerous here, but agrees to help and wishes him luck. She asks what he wants to ask, and he explains in which direction and how far away the nearest human settlement is. She explains that talking cats are rare and offers to help, then tells them that the nearest city is behind the mountain, and the journey there will take 3 to 4 days, taking into account the cat's paws. She says that if she doesn't sleep, she'll get there in 2. But he explains that it's impossible and is surprised by the impossibility. Nagoro Kaito tells him that strong monsters roam here at night, it is better to climb a tree. He explains that shooting star bears are 2 to 3 times larger than humans, like to throw stones and can defeat a human knight, and he is surprised by the useful information and asks what kind of bear it is. He says that fortunately bears rarely get along with each other and walk alone, but if you come across one, it's better to give up, and then says that he hates bears. Nagoro Kaito thanks her and promises to do everything to survive, and she explains that she worries about him too much and asks his name. He explains that his name is just Kaito, and she asks who the fairy is and what her name is. Nagoro Kaito explains that they are all connected and don't have names, sharing memories and experiences, and he explains that he is the spirit of the wind, and the fairies are companions of spirits and fabulous creatures. He says that there are many winged people and other winged species in the world, but the little ones with wings are spirits, and he is surprised by winged people. Nagoro Kaito says that he has entered a fantasy world with spirits and winged people, and now he has high expectations for this world, and the fairy explains that only those with magical powers can communicate with spirits, so a cat talking to her is a rare occurrence, and she did not expect an answer. He says that he is not against doing magic and asks if he is right that he is capable of it, and she replies that who knows. The man explains that magical power and talent for magic are two different things, and that martial arts are not only about physical strength, and adds that most people cannot master magic, after which Nagoro Kaito reflects that few people in this world use magic. He asks if it will be possible for a cat to use human magic, and the fairy explains that spirit and human magic are different things and advises asking a human magician. Nagoro Kaito says that he doesn't understand how he uses magic, explains that telepathy is also magic, and the cat thinks it's impossible to become a student and doubts that anyone will take the cat as a student. He says that many will want to take the talking cat and use it for experiments, and warns that there won't even be time. Nagoro Kaito says that animal experiments are inhumane, and she advises not to approach research centers, but rather to find an old mage healer, gain his trust, and start small to avoid conflicts. He says that he will remember the advice for the rest of his life and hopes that the spirit will take him, and also explains that one can lie belly up on the laboratory table. Nagoro Kaito thanks the spirit, who explains that it is time to go and that he needs to go as far as possible. After which Kaito explains that he learned about the forest and took the first step in his new life as a cat. He says that this is the 4th day of his descent from the mountain in the company of the spirit. Nagoro Kaito says his body is already at its limit. He says that it is very scary in the mountains at night because of wild animals, strange cries of birds and a centipede he encountered, and the girl is surprised. She says that they avoid dangerous places and there is no need to worry, explains that she uses the wind to hide the smell and will immediately wake them up if there is danger. Nagoro Kaito thanks the wind spirit, who explains that he can go no further and tells him that the human settlement is already nearby, and without his kindness he would have to stand before the Supreme Being again. He says he will never forget the help and asks her to find him if needed, and she laughs and says she will remember, but doesn't think he will be able to help. The fairy wishes good luck to Nagoro Kaito, who is surprised by the light and explains that it might be the spirit's blessings, and then he becomes even more joyful. He says his goal is at the foot of the mountain. Nagoro Kaito explains that there are several towns and villages in that direction, and he notices the stumps of felled trees and says that a large mansion is already visible. He explains that this is to prevent anyone from getting in, is surprised that it is private property, and notices a tall, long, thick stem with large, bright red berries. Nagoro Kaito explains that berries are easy to grow, nutritious, and perfect for beginning gardeners, and the harvest yields a true treasure of the plant world. He bites the tomato greedily, is surprised by its taste and thanks the tomato, repeating that tomatoes have always been so tasty. Nagoro Kaito says that he will now take another tomato, and then is surprised that the girl noticed him, and explains that he must finish the tomato first. He looks attentively, and he eats an apple. Nagoro Kaito explains what he eats, and she watches him closely. He says he's getting down to business, and she watches him closely as he eats. Nagoro Kaito apologizes for stealing and explains that the food was delicious, and she is surprised. He confesses to the grave sin of stealing vegetables, and the girl is surprised at what he said and asks to listen to him. Nagoro Kaito explains that he doesn't have any money with him to pay for the tomatoes, and she tells him that she wandered through the mountains for 3 days without food or drink and almost died. He says he just filled his belly with gentleman tomatoes, and the girl asks who gentleman tomatoes are and why he says. She says it's better not to tell anyone that he was human. Nagoro Kaito asks why, and she explains that he was not a person of this world and asks if he thinks that the people here would have the same logic as the people from his world. He explains that he doesn't lie very much and doesn't understand how he learned to speak, and she asks if he really is a cat, where he came from, what his name is, where he's going, and if she can pet him. She says you can iron as much as you want, and he explains that he is a nameless fool and a vegetable thief who will answer any question if his life is spared. Nagoro Kaido says he prefers being petted under the chin and explains that his tummy shouldn't be touched, and he says that it's not bad. He screams that he can't believe what he heard. She explains that she will introduce Luke to her father, and Luke is surprised that he has a name and will be her owner, and she explains that her father loves dogs, but thinks that they will get along. She asks to present all the options. The man demands to return the cat to where he found it. The cat is happy, and the other cat in the box explains that he was abandoned and the incident with the theft of vegetables will go unpunished. She explains that keeping a cat is a big responsibility and her parents will be against it, but everything will be fine, because an aristocrat can't miss out on a talking cat. He is surprised that this is the territory of aristocrats, and explains that the garden also belonged to an aristocrat, after which he is surprised that the girl is also a young aristocrat. Nagoro Kaido says that it's not bad and even very good. He says that aristocrats' pets often live happily, explains that there couldn't be a better life for a cat, and explains that you won't have to eat cockroaches or beetles. Nagoro Kaido says he is satisfied with this young lady and asks what her name is. She reveals that her name is Clarice Riedelheim. He says that she loves cats, and she explains that she has formal and beautiful clothes with the aura of an aristocrat. She says it's understandable, and Nagoro Kaido tells him that a wonderful life as a pet awaits him. She says, oh, and that's if everything goes well, and he says that we need to try not to come across as a bad guy and asks if they would even want to leave such a young lady with a suspicious talking cat. Nagoro Kaido says that he could be used for espionage purposes given his special ability, and wonders if he could refuse if he was sent to spy on enemy forces. He agrees to 3 meals a day, a nap during the day and a comfortable life, just to avoid participating in the experiments, and he explains that he does not think this will happen, since his daughter has grown up kind. She says Father Clarice and then wonders what kind of man he is. He says that Clarice brought a cat and announces his next mission: to win the trust of his father, who loves dogs. Nagoro Kaido explains that the cat is a small tiger. The text explains that cats have an excellent sense of balance, flexibility, sharp fangs and claws, and are excellent nocturnal hunters, but remain self-centered and cruel predators. He explains that cats don't think about their owners and are inferior in usefulness to other animals, and also explains that Viscount Ries Riedelheim is a dog person to the core. He explains that dogs, especially hunting dogs, are very good, smart, fast and loyal, and also explains that raising and training them is a pleasure. The man says that his daughter adopted a cat, but he doesn't like cats, considers dogs more useful, and explains that they don't even get along with cats, although he wouldn't mind if she took a puppy, a rabbit, or a bird. Nagoro Kaido explains that if you keep a cat outside, they will be afraid that the dogs will eat it. If you keep it indoors, they will be afraid that it will make a mess, and if they kill it, Clarissa will be sad. He says that there is no room for the cat in the house and they need to find a place to put him, and then asks Sasha what the matter is and if there is anything else wrong. Nagoro Kaido is surprised when the girl calls him a talking cat, and the maid explains that there is hardly a place for a cat in this house. Luke says he's a stray cat that Clarissa just picked up and he's happy to meet her. The woman explains that she just adopted a cat named Luke and is already getting used to him, and the man addresses her as young mistress. She is surprised and asks Sasha, and also thinks that the cat definitely knows etiquette. She says that she wants to introduce Luke to her father and asks to serve tea. Luke agrees, and the maid offers a saucer, explaining that the tea will cool faster in a saucer. She explains that he will take the cup with his paws and talks about cat sensitivity to hot things and the possibility of drinking tea, and he says, "As you wish." He asks to add milk, if there is any, and says that it helps with kidney stones, and the woman is surprised by the cat's attentiveness and thinks how to explain this to the gentleman, who asks Sasha not to hesitate to say if there is anything else. She says that the interlocutor is still young and inexperienced, but can tell her everything and there is no need to hide anything. He explains that the cat is speaking and wants to introduce him to her, laughs at the fact that Clarissa has learned to negotiate, asks if the cat will be a vassal, and asks for a report on his daughter, promising not to blame her. She explains that the thing is that he says that the cat is enjoying tea with the young lady right now. She explains that the cat took the cup, asked for milk and lifts it with his little paws. He says that the cat is drinking tea and explains that it is not quite so, and also asks if tea is harmful for cats and whether they can. She says that he praised their delicious and aromatic tea. He remains silent. Viscount Rise says it's best to look at him, and they say he takes the place of the head of the family, although he is not his own child, adopted by an influential merchant. He says that when he turned 20, all his brothers died from a terrible epidemic, so Rise had to take on the position of head of the family, and despite this, his training in the trade and 10 years of living in a merchant's family were not in vain. It is explained that the merchant's habits have remained the same. He values people for their abilities, and Rise saw this with his own eyes. Nagoro Kaido explains that his name is now Luke, a stray cat who was taken in by the Viscount's beautiful daughter. He says that he is very honored that they came in person so that he could introduce himself, and he is very sorry for taking up their time, and at the same time he is surprised by the word cat. Nagoro Kaido is surprised that it is definitely a cat. She says that she picked it up, and the man explains that first they ask you to sit down and apologizes. The girl is surprised, and he is sitting on her lap and looking straight ahead. He says he acts like he already lives here and asks if it's better to call Mr. Nagoro or Luke. Nagoro Kaido says that his real name would sound strange in their country and asks to call him just Luke, and he agrees to this name. He says he wants to know who he is. Nagoro Kaido explains that the cat has nice fur, a cute face and paws, and looks smart, but it's just an ordinary cat that doesn't speak human language. He says that in the capital there are magical dolls that are controlled by magic, but the technology is not yet sufficiently developed and is far from such quality. Nagoro Kaido explains that he is not from this world, but lived in another before an accident that sent him to this world, and the man says therefore. He says he met a spirit from another world who led him out of the mountains in a few days, and he explains that he understood what it meant. He explains that she, as King Strain, founded Sacrisia, and also that Kirishima from the Kazel Kingdom saved the country, and she is surprised that there are many like her in the world. Nagoro Kaido apologizes and explains that he is hearing about this for the first time, so he was surprised. He says he doesn't know who all these people are, but someone named Kirishima might be from the same country and asks if he can meet her, then explains that such theories didn't exist, although there are heroes in the form of cats in Western legends, and asks if these legendary people were cats, and she explains. She explains that it's all just a fairy tale and is afraid that he is alone in this, and Nagoro Kaido says that this is how. He says that now he is a stray cat and does not know where to go. He is ready to work on the farm and asks for permission to stay and work as a guard, turning to Mr. Rise. He says that the cat shows a desire to work, explains that it is clear from her face that he has no choice, and says that if he refuses, she will not speak to him for several months, and she is full of hope. He explains that Clarissa is extremely intelligent and obedient, but becomes stubborn and persistent when she wants something very much, and that this cat is hardly suitable for the problems of keeping cats, and guarding the field is not necessary. Nagoro Kaido says that if the cat wants to stay, he will be provided with food provided there are no problems, and the cat is surprised and doubts that the talking cat does not arouse suspicion. He says it's very suspicious, explains that he can't leave them unattended on his property, and that it would be a problem if they ran away with his family's dirty secrets. Nagoro Kaido explains that there are almost no visitors here. It is a good place for hiding, and he allows himself to be addressed as you, acknowledging the intelligence and common sense of the interlocutor and offering to stay. He explains that he had plans, and the fact that she is from another world might come in handy, and he also doesn't want to upset his daughter and is confident that the smart cat won't cause any problems. Nagoro Kaido thanks him and admits that he didn't expect such kind words, given his suspicious nature, and doesn't know how he can repay him. He says that one day the time will come when she will be able to do so, and asks Clarissa if he heard that she picked him up in the garden, wondering if she found him there. Nagoro Kaido explains that Luke ate red balls and was very hungry. He explains that he ate 2 red balls, and the man is surprised and asks what he is saying, after which he apologizes. He explains that the red ball fruits are completely inedible, explains their bitter taste and toxicity, and also asks if cats from another world have problems with taste. Nagoro Kaido apologizes and explains that he didn't know vegetables were so expensive, and the man explains that the dyes are inedible and is surprised that in their world, red balls are called gentleman tomatoes. He says the tomato seemed ripe, fresh, red and glossy with a moderate acidity. And the man explains that the dry shell with the seed inside makes it unfit for eating, even if it is ripe. He says and she is surprised that she does not understand who this Senor Tomato really is. Nagoro Kaido says he loves good food and dreams of trying delicious tomato dishes. He says that everything turned out strangely. He explains that he has received permission to stay from Viscount Rise and explains that he may be hesitant because of the accusation of stealing vegetables. And she says that she saw him eating red berries from the red ball patch. He says that it's worth checking to make sure there are no problems with the food they will be feeding and invites Luke to come with them, to which she agrees. She thinks about the problems with blue tomatoes, and Nagoro Kaido explains that the taste and texture were like tomatoes blessed by the sun, and that such vegetables are only used as dyes. He tells her that the most delicious tomatoes grow in this garden, and she explains that she wants to try them all. Nagoro Kaido says that red balls should have grown here and explains that they could have been transplanted, but he saw them 3 days ago, and the girl asks if they were talking about different vegetables. He explains that the tomato is heavy and definitely filled with something inside. Nagoro Kaido explains that the vegetable has a refreshing, slightly sour taste and can be eaten raw or cooked, and the man explains that it looks delicious and asks if it is sweet, after which Nagoro Kaido confirms that he couldn't resist eating it. He explains that he is thinking about a tomato, and he wonders why he is explaining to the owner of the garden what a tomato is. Nagoro Kaido says that there are no tomatoes in this world. He needs to collect his thoughts. He explains that there used to be another plant growing here, but Rise could understand if it looked like a tomato, and he suddenly notices a bad feeling. He explains that the tomato is fresh, juicy, and incredibly delicious, and a man and woman watch as he tastes the tomato. Nagoro Kaido says that he couldn't forget that taste and explains that yes, indeed. He says that in a past life, his neighbor with a vegetable garden often gave him tomatoes, which she experimentally crossed and created the ideal variety. Nagoro Kaido explains that there used to be another plant called the red ball growing there, and is surprised that he was able to change it into tomatoes, then explains that the idea in his head may be much more complicated than it seemed. She says she'll try it too, but her father asks her not to, fearing the poison. He explains that it's more logical for him to try, and the cat asks if she's afraid of being poisoned. She explains that she just really wants to taste it, and he says he misunderstood. He says he'll take it home and ask the others for their opinion, and she asks to call Lilfi, since she knows more than him. He turns around and she says Luke, turning her attention to him. She asks if he brought them with him, and Nagoro Kaido is surprised. He explains that he hasn't quite realized yet, perhaps unconsciously, that it was a very popular vegetable from his world, and she says that she is smart, almost, but not quite. He says it looks delicious. She says it's very tasty and can be eaten raw or used in cooking. He explains that he'll try it if the Viscount allows it. She asks who Lilfly is, and he explains that she is his cousin and his father's niece named Lil, who is talented in magic, lives separately and knows a lot. Nagoro Kaido says that she is a little shy and asks to keep this in mind, and he is surprised and asks, but what exactly? He says that a person can be shy in front of a cat and asks what a little means. He says he's visiting his sister Lil, and she explains that when Lil is busy researching, she never notices anyone. She asks if she makes perfume, and he explains that it is a product perfume and magic water that sells well. She says Lady Clarissa, and she is surprised and asks if it is a cat, and admires her beauty with the face of an angel. He says that it is as if a goddess is standing before him, and explains that a bright future awaits Clarissa in this regard, too, and is also amazed at the extraordinary beauty of the girl, who seems to have descended from paradise. He says that he is upset to find himself in this form. She explains that she chose a cat, and she also loves cats. She says that she always dreamed of having a cat, and the last time she petted one was when she was 18 or 20 years old. And she says that the cat is fluffy and offers to touch it, but explains that it's probably better not to touch it, and the cat seems a little scared. She says she doesn't think Luke will mind and asks what he says, and Nagoro Kaido says to do whatever they want. He admires her innocent and sweet expression, and the girl explains that Luke told her to introduce herself properly. Nagoro Kaido reveals that he is a stray cat that Lady Clarissa recently took in and explains that he is useless for now, but appreciates being allowed to stay, and she is surprised. She explains that she feels like she's just been demoted, and the cat explains that he's an ordinary cat who can talk and do anything she asks of him except catch mice. She explains that she doesn't understand whether it is a cat or a person and turns to Lady Clarissa, who is surprised and screams when someone grabs her hand. Nagoro Kaido explains that Lilify has a much more normal reaction than the others and says that it's understandable. She says that Clarissa had an unhealthy curiosity from the very first minutes, and Viscount Rise was unexpectedly kind to her, and he explains that he forgot what the reaction should be, after which she holds him, who jerks sharply. She says that her father allowed Luke to live with them and asks him to befriend him, and she is surprised that the cat is speaking in front of her. Nagoro Kaido says that Luke is smart, and he is surprised that smart cats can now talk, and explains that with Clarissa everything is simple. He approaches Mrs. Lifley, explaining that he is a cat from another world and would like to make friends, as he has no other acquaintances here. She is glad to meet him and says hello to the cat, and the cat is surprised that he doesn't run away and touches him. She asks permission to hug Nagoro Kaido, and the other one agrees and admires the fluffy and soft cat. He says it smells so soft and nice and then exclaims that it's impossible. He understands that now the cat doubts whether he deserves happiness, explains that the car died to save the cat, and she says that she can borrow from him when he allows. Nagoro Kaido says that he loves cats and that he is the first cat that didn't run away from her, and she explains that he is still a cat. She says the cat is very cute, fluffy, and soft, and he thinks she needs a cat in her life, and she explains that they don't listen to her. Nagoro Kaido says that he will give Luke to his little sister Lil if she will be on his side in disputes with their father. Lil agrees, and the girl says that she found Luke when he was eating red balls, and asks if she heard about gentleman tomatoes while Nagoro. She says she's never heard of gentleman tomatoes, explains that's what everyone calls them now, and talks about a possible mutation of the red balls. She asks what the red ball looks like. Nagoro Kaido explains that this is the red ball, and she says that the fruit should lie here and they won't let go of her hands. He says that the plant resembles a tomato in color, but the shape is different. It is used as a dye, and he admits that he could have mistaken it for a tomato due to hunger. Nagoro Kaido asks if he can hold him in his paws, and she apologizes and says that it still needs to be tested. He explains that it is a tomato, and the other one says that he has many more and asks him to take one. She is silent, he blinks. He says the red ball turned into a tomato and wonders why this happened. Nagoro Kaido explains that the red ball turned into a tomato. He remains silent and then looks away as he examines the shiny tomato. Nagoro Kaido explains that this is not a dream and no one will believe it if he destroys the evidence, and she explains that the red ball has now changed shape. She's surprised there are witnesses and asks Luke what it was, and he explains it hesitantly. She explains what just happened and asks how it was done, and Nagoro Kaido says he doesn't understand whether it was magic or not. The Supreme Being tells him that he will receive 8 points with bonuses, including understanding of languages, talent for magic, strength, luck, and resistance, and asks how he. Nagoro Kaido explains that he understands local languages, can walk on 2 legs, and considers his meeting with the spirit and Viscount Rise to be lucky, while he explains that he ate 3 tomatoes and his cat's stomach didn't complain. He explains that he is not sure whether this can be considered magic and says that he does not think that she was lied to about magic, although he considers it closer to a miracle than to magic, and explains that he imagined that he would throw fireballs or fly like in the game. She tells Luke that she doesn't understand what's going on and explains that she may have gained a special ability, and he is surprised and asks about turning a tomato into a bird. Nagoro Kaido explains that nothing happens when he tries to do anything to the tomato, and then agrees to try to get it back, discussing it with the girl. She says they'll try this now. Nagoro Kaido says that the form does not change and does not come out, and the girl asks if he can turn a piece of wood into something made of wood. He tells her it's a carved wooden bear, and she says she missed again and explains she thought it would work. Nagoro Kaido explains that he can transform objects from his past life into food, but he cannot transform iron bars and other inedible things. He explains that the object must be at least remotely similar in appearance, and explains that this is why he couldn't turn a piece of wood into a tomato. Nagoro Kaito explains that if he had known about his ability earlier, he wouldn't have been suffering from hunger in the mountains, and wonders why he wasn't given a piece of paper explaining how his abilities work. They explain that while the ladies are frozen, he jumps to the window and looks away. Nagoro Kaito says that a plate, fork, and cup are needed, and also asks if there is hot water, explaining that he can transform ordinary water with his ability. He says that the tea has been made and explains the process of pouring the liquid into the cup. Nagoro Kaito says that this is definitely cheating, and with this ability there will never be a problem with food, whether you are a human or a cat. He says that since they are experimenting, he suggests they try it out. Lady Clarissa wishes him a good appetite. He explains that it was firewood and is afraid that it is an illusion. Then Lady Clarissa tries the food and is surprised by the taste. She says that the dessert is very tasty and soft, and Nagoro Kaito explains that it seems he overdid it and asks his sister to try it. She explains that there are no cream or biscuit sweets in this world and suggests that sugar might be a treasure, and he says that he should try it himself. Nagoro Kaito says that the bûche de Noël is a high school boy's sweet dream that was given to him instead of cake, and he explains that anyone would fall in love with this dessert, and he says that the taste is sweet chocolate, berries, and fruits with a soft sponge cake and a refreshing aftertaste. He says he heard that cats are unable to taste sweets, but his language is closer to human language, and explains that chocolate is taboo for cats, but he can eat whatever he wants. Nagoro Kaito explains that he is a cat who can control himself, but that no one can deny the fact that he can get fat. She invites her sister Lil to try it, and she is surprised and says that it's written all over her face. There are empty plates with forks on the table, shining with cleanliness. Nagoro Kaito forbids Luke from having another dessert, explaining that excessive consumption of sweets without a balanced diet is harmful to a growing body, and advises him to eat healthy food. He explains that a pet should pamper its owner, but he is not going to harm her health, and she listens silently. Nagoro Kaito explains that being a pet sometimes requires being harsh with your owner, but she remains silent. He offers a blue tomato, the girl agrees, tries it, and says that the taste is unusual but also delicious. She explains that the reaction is not as strong as after dessert, but with time she will be able to understand the true value of tomatoes, and Nagoro Kaito says that this will become the basis for her healthy body and spirit. He says Luke, and she replies that. Nagoro Kaito remarks that her breasts are conspicuous, and she explains that she doesn't quite understand how magic works, but she can use magic evaluation since she is also a mage. He says he wants to evaluate Luke's abilities, and Luke says that he has already admitted that he is from another world, and explains that he does not want to die and is hiding dark stories from the past. Nagoro Kaito asks if he will be able to see memories. She explains that this will not happen and tells what exactly she will be able to find out. She explains that magic controls the 4 elements, influences the mind and feelings, uses the power of faith and controls space, and through magical assessment one learns about the presence of talent. Nagoro Kaito explains that Sister Leah has a talent for water magic and holy magic. He says that this is a test of professional aptitude, and she says that she can also throw fireballs, but this is not her strong point. The woman explains that it is difficult for her to learn magic because of her family, but she has mastered water magic best. The girl says that she will do everything now, and he allows it and wants to learn more about himself. He notices that she is having fun, and the girl says that she is glad to have another fellow magician. Nagoro Kaito explains that the spirit said that most people can't use magic and asks if there really aren't any more magicians here, and the girl thanks him for waiting. He says it's a stone slab and sees a magical instrument for the first time, and the woman explains that it's a magic mirror that responds to magical power. He explains that with the help of recording magic, one can make notes and record voices, and if one uses light magic, the object will glow brightly. Nagoro Kaito explains that the device is similar to a smartphone without the ability to make calls, with mathematical magic, cartographic clairvoyance, weather forecasting, and display of magical evaluation results. He explains that magical talent is a gift from the gods to souls and is mostly innate, and that very rare cases of awakening of talent in late age are associated with direct contact with gods and divine beings. Nagoro Kaido says he communicated with a potential goddess and asks if that means she blessed him or something. She explains that this will allow her to find out her level of abilities and their ceiling. He is surprised. She asks him to take her hand. He apologizes and says that he has paws. She agrees. Nagoro Kaido says let's deal with this some other time, and he admires the paw, calling it cute. He explains that the subject of the evaluation is Luke, a demigod with cat, holy and dark magic, possessing special abilities and titles, after which the girl calls Luke by name. He wonders what God is and wonders if Luke the cat is, after which the continuation follows. Nagoro Kaido says he feels bad about the results and explains that he has to solve problems as they come, then stops. He explains that Lilfi and Lady Clarissa are in shock right now and says that they need to come up with something to calm them down. Nagoro Kaido explains that he didn't make anything up and is just a poor stray cat, and the girl is surprised and calls him God. She explains that normal cats can't turn firewood into dessert, and says that this is only possible if he is not a god, and he asks her to stop because he can't handle the pressure. Nagoro Kaido explains that he is not a god and should not be treated like that, and the girl says that she has never seen such a thing and does not understand what cat magic is. She explains that, apart from the skill of various resistances, she doesn't see anything familiar and that it is impossible to have talent for holy magic and dark magic at the same time. He says that there are many unfamiliar words here, for example, 3 classes of English, and is surprised that during reincarnation this became a title, explaining that knowledge is not needed here, and no one knows this language anyway, and also explains that not everything is clear with the imitation and does not understand the connection with Akasha, hoping that this is not dangerous. Nagoro Kaido is surprised that thanks to his trick, he turned the red ball into a tomato and the firewood into dessert. He explains that he was indeed given a strange and powerful power, and the woman wonders why she was given the race of a demigod and that the locals will be shocked. He asks not to tell Viscount Rise, and she explains that she doesn't know how to do it. She explains that if they don't show enough hospitality, they will suffer divine punishment, but he objects that it's not like that and reminds her that she is a demigod. Nagoro Kaido explains that he is an ordinary cat and asks for a chance to be an ordinary cat, and she explains that he is just a cat that walks on his hind legs and talks, and a cat that made a delicious dessert out of firewood. He explains that he doesn't want to be treated like a god and doesn't want anything more to follow, and the other one says that he fires him for this and asks if he can handle it. Nagoro Kaido says that he can't even hunt mice and explains that he can't defeat anyone except mice, and she says that if he asks, he won't tell his father anything. He says he's happy to be a cat in a little girl's arms, and the girl explains that if they don't side with Luke, he'll leave, and then they won't be able to eat the treats. She says that, in that case, if he doesn't mind, Nagoro Kaido asks to be addressed as a normal cat. He says that imitation is a cool thing and he will need to test his abilities at his leisure, since he only knows the power of these things by name for now, and he explains that his uncle called him, so it's definitely time for them to go back. Nagoro Kaido explains that he can turn into a super cool tiger and calls himself the king of beasts, and then says that the main thing is to try not to scare Clarice. He says that in everyday life it is inconvenient to maintain the form of a tiger, but he will turn into a scary tiger in trouble and he needs to come up with a cool pose for the transformation. She explains that it is a peaceful and normal wish, and he tells her that the structure will collapse in about an hour, and she asks why he meowed then. She says a lot has happened, and he explains that they were there for a long time. She says that the fruits look like red balls, do not seem poisonous to the taste and have an excellent taste, but you need to understand what will happen with their long-term use. Nagoro Kaido says that it's better to give a couple of volunteers every day, and that's the best option. The cat explains that the product has a lot of water, so it's better to eat it fresh, and she asks if it can be stored in the refrigerator. He explains that Lilfly creates ice with her magic, and they store it in a wooden box. Nagoro Kaido says that creating ice with water magic is a great way to make money, and the girl explains that almost all the ice in the nearest town is created by Lil's sister's magic, and he explains that ice magic is understandable, and Nagoro Kaido says that this is a great place to store them. She says she's glad to meet all the servants and that Viscount Rise warned them about me in advance. And he explains that everyone was so surprised that some couldn't even keep their mouths shut. The man tells Luke that since he introduced him to the servants, it's time to introduce him to his dogs, and Nagoro Kaido is surprised that he forgot about them. He explains that he must show it to them, Otherwise, if they mistake him for just a stray cat, he gets scared. The man explains that all his dogs are very smart and he would like to avoid any unexpected circumstances. And she says that meeting them face to face is a fear, and he thanks her. There are 12 dogs and 10 horses on the estate. It is said that the city contains hardy and knightly horses, and here mainly horses are for Rei's personal use. He explains that it is customary in the country to charge taxes for keeping animals, and explains that the tax depends on the size of the farm, and the man notices the silence and points to the dogs. The man is surprised by what is happening, and the dogs shout that they are listening to his order and call him master. Nagoro Kaito is surprised that he is called the king of beasts, although he does not have a royal bloodline and the qualities of a ruler, and asks if he is even known. He says he doesn't understand what's going on and is surprised by his dog's behavior, while the other asks Luke if he did something. Nagoro Kaito explains that he has nothing to do with it and says that he will pretend to be a fool, although he seriously doubts that they will believe him. He reveals that he is actually the king of the beasts and explains that even if he believes it, he could end up in trouble. Nagoro Kaito says that Luke doesn't understand anything and explains that putting on a cute face is a good option, but it doesn't suit this situation. He explains that he needs to make a convincing argument and use facts, notices that he is being greeted and decides to respond, after which he quickly runs away from the girl. Nagoro Kaito demands not to use ambiguous phrases, and he says that they have already taken possession of the young lady Clarissa, and this should be expected from their ruler. He asks them to relax and greets the dogs, who raise their heads, and one of them is surprised by the cat's words, who explains that he is just an ordinary cat and does not understand the king of beasts. The voice says that he is a demigod and the highest being in the world, whom everyone has been waiting for according to prophecy, and Nagoro Kaito promises to serve him faithfully. She says that he does have Luke's special ability after all, and explains that something very unexpected happened that caused her dreams to be shattered and that she doesn't need to worry about being eaten. Rise reveals that he loves dogs and this is connected to his memories from the past. 3 dogs are barking happily. He speaks more quietly, and the man with the beard watches him closely. Nagoro Kaito explains that the king of beasts must have been an animal that came on 2 legs, and the dog confirms this. One explains that its scent spreads on the wind and is noticed by animals, but has no effect on fish, insects, turtles, and reptiles, while another explains that the training and education of Rise's owner influences the loyalty of animals. Nagoro Kaito asks if they communicate through telepathy, and the dog explains that they can only communicate thanks to his abilities. He explains that the king of beasts transmits the thoughts of animals through their abilities, and he knows details that even a dog does not know, because it is engraved in their thoughts on an instinctive level. Nagoro Kaito explains that he is not an ordinary beast, but a demigod, and explains that beasts are more sensitive to abilities, while humans are merely a tool for the movement of fate without the right to reincarnation. He says that no man has an afterlife after death and the divinity has spoken the truth by excluding him. Nagoro Kaito explains that humans don't reincarnate, only animals become spirits and are transported to the next world, and he's already been reincarnated as a dog 3 times and asks what Luke plans to do next. He asks if they are going to destroy humanity for the sake of the animal kingdom, and the other cat says that he doesn't like this idea and categorically refuses. Nagoro Kaito says that he plans to lead a peaceful life and just coexist, explains that they serve Lord Rise faithfully and asks to convey that there is no need to fear such an outcome of events, and the man confirms that this is a good idea. He explains that if humans are inferior beings, then recognizing Viscount Rise as the master contradicts this, and clarifies that Lady Clarissa is also recognized as the mistress. Nagoro Kaito says that he feels warm on his back, he doesn't feel guilty, like on Lady Lilfy's chest, and explains that people can't understand how nice it is to lie on a fluffy and soft back. And after tea he was unable to rest, although he really wanted to. He tells Luke that they seem to be getting along. Nagoro Kaito explains that he is a good animal translator, and the man says that Nagoro Kaito is clearly an unusual cat, while the cat massages the dog. He says that the cats tell Mr. Rise that they will serve him faithfully and truly and repay him with the same kindness that he showed them. A man wonders if he understands what animals are saying, and Nagoro Kaito explains that he understands the meaning of their words, and talks about the devotion and gratitude of the dog Cecil for caring for him as a child. He explains what he wanted to say and is surprised. Nagoro Kaido tells Cecil that he is very honest and dogs are cool after all, and then is surprised that he is called the King of Beasts. He wonders what would happen if he encountered the shooting star bears and followed the path of cruelty, leading them to conquer humanity. Nagoro Kaido speculates that he may have been sent to this world to cause an animal rebellion against humanity or as a social experiment, and that he was just a test subject from the start. He says it's time for dinner, and she calls him Luke and turns to Lady Clarissa. Nagoro Kaido says it's food. He says that he can create any food from the past world, including Japanese cuisine, through imitation, but he is also interested in local dishes and hopes that he will be allowed to try something, although perhaps not be seated at the same table. He tells Luke to sit down, and Luke is surprised. Nagoro Kaido says that he can't treat the cat like a simple animal and that Lilfly asks to be treated as an equal, and the cat asks if he can eat the same food, notices the perfect height of the high chair, and wonders if the aristocrats are too kind to him. He says that the aristocrats in this world may not be so arrogant and the boundaries are blurred, and also explains that from his interactions with the servants, he understands their close relationships. Nagoro Kaido explains that education and religion usually influence the foundations of society, and says that he needs to understand more about the structure of the world, after which he wishes him bon appetit. He hopes she likes it and he thanks him. Nagoro Kaido explains that the soup is hot and says that he likes to eat it with a spoon. He says that after a long time in the mountains, the hot soup with the perfect amount of salt and vegetable broth is so delicious that it brings tears to his eyes, and he hasn't eaten home-cooked food in a long time. Nagoro Kaido explains that the cat eats soup with a spoon and uses a fork and knife, and he explains that the aristocrat's local cuisine is very simple and it's only a matter of time before he starts promoting the cult of tomatoes. He says that we need to sort out the yield, explaining that turning them from red balls every time will be quite a hassle. He explains that the chef was afraid that Nagoro Kaido wouldn't like the food, and Nagoro Kaido says that everything is very tasty and very, very tasty. He asks Mr. Rise how he should behave according to etiquette if he finishes eating faster than everyone else. Nagoro Kaido explains that now there is no need to wait for the owner if he doesn't have time to eat. He can wait, and suggests looking into the kitchen, and the cat thanks him and says that he would like to compliment the chef on the new ingredients. The man tells Sasha to take Luke home, and she nods in response. Sasha asks him to follow her, and the cat agrees, after which she explains that she is new, has been working here for 6 months and looks mature, although she is only 15 years old. He says that Clarissa is 9 years old, Lipfly is 19 years old, Viscount is 38 years old, the eldest son studies in the capital and is about 15 years old, and Nagoro Kaido jokes that he is just a cat. She says that the daughters of lesser aristocrats often work in mansions to get an education, and maids are usually not specifically sought out, but given work through connections, such as relatives. Nagoro Kaido says that he is a normal pet and can be called just Luke, and she explains that he is not her pet, but Lady Clarissa's pet. He says that it would be more correct to address him as Sir, but he explains that you can't argue with that. Nagoro Kaido explains that she should prepare to treat him like an unusual cat and suggests calling him whatever she feels comfortable with, and she is surprised that he seems older than her. She says that the owner asked to do everything for convenience, and explains that she is not familiar with the foundations of the world, but hopes to learn more. Nagoro Kaido explains that he now has 2 mentors. He doesn't want to be a useless pet. He wants to bring new vegetables and more delicious dishes to the dinner table. Otherwise, he will feel guilty. He explains that in ancient times cats were called gods of fertility for protecting the harvest, and he will become a preacher of the tomato cult, explaining the need to wean people off, calling them Mr. Tomato. He asks if Luke gets tired when he walks on his hind legs, and Luke explains that it comes suspiciously easy to him. Nagoro Kaido is surprised when he looks at the spices, and the man says it's Luke, and the woman asks if they're finished eating. He thanks for the delicious dinner and says that he wanted to know about the ingredients and seasonings that were used. The chef at the Heiser mansion explains that they have 3 independent children and asks if Romina has any dishes she doesn't like, and she says she never thought she'd be feeding a talking cat. Nagoro Kaido says he didn't think they'd be cooking for aristocrats, and explains that such sweet grandparents create a cozy atmosphere. The woman talks about spices and he listens. The man explains that salt is the most important thing in cooking, Common people use it every day, and Nagoro Kaito asks if there are any sweeteners for sweetness. The man explains that Amazura is a syrup made from mountain plants, expensive and rare, bought only for special occasions, and he remembers hearing about it in history. The man explains that maltose is used in regular dishes, but honey is not used because of its dangers. Nagoro Kaito is surprised and asks if this means that honey and other things are also there. He explains that the poison in honey is deadly and people won't eat it even if they're hungry, and the man says that now they need to take further action. Nagoro Kaito says that when talking about sweets you can't help but mention fruits, and that they are used to make jam. He explains that he now understands and speaks clearly. He explains that there is no regular sugar in this world. Nagoro Kaito explains that sugar beets or cane can be used, but sugar can be too powerful, and the magic of sugar can surpass the power of tomatoes, becoming a strategic resource for starting a war. He explains that sugar started the colonial era with slave labor and other evils, and says he doesn't want to bring that here. Nagoro Kaito asks to tell him more about the seasonings, and he explains that he will not be creating them for now. Then the two tell him what they were told. They explain that there is no pepper here or in other countries, but there is wine vinegar which is used to make mayonnaise from eggs, oil and vinegar. He explains that there are no tomatoes or ketchup, chili peppers are rarely used. There are no other advanced sauces either. There are unknown seasonings, and he offers soy sauce made from fermented beans. Nagoro Kaito is surprised that it's soy sauce. He says that they had this thing in his country too and asks if he can try a little. And the man explains that the taste is rather bland and offers cheese marinated in soy sauce as a snack to go with the alcohol. Nagoro Kaito shouts that it's delicious and talks about the rich flavor of the cheese and the luxurious saltiness. He explains that soy sauce is usually used for frying vegetables or grilling meat, and asks if they use it in their home country, to which the man confirms, and the woman asks about miso, and he is surprised that if there is soy sauce, then there can be miso. He says it's red miso and asks if that's what we're talking about. The woman explains that miso and soy sauce are used to prepare food for servants and soldiers, and the man explains that they are spread on meat or mixed into soup, and offers to make something with these ingredients, to which Nagoro Kaito eagerly agrees. He says that we need to think about it, and he asks what to cook. He explains that mayonnaise and soy sauce came from other non-cat-shaped travelers, and they were unlikely to have abilities like his imitation, so they couldn't create something that doesn't exist in this world. Nagoro Kaito explains that he received more amazing things than the rest and hopes that due to improper adjustment there will be no problems in the future. He explains that he is not going to give up his powers to the gods and goddesses, and she says Luke. The woman tells Lady Clarissa and Mrs. Lilfley that Sasha must heat the water. Lady Clarissa explains that it is time for a bath. Nagoro Kaito explains that no one will drag him into the bath with girls, and says that he will somehow manage on his own then. He is surprised that he will be washed in the bathroom. The girl explains that he needs to be washed first, and the maid asks to prepare a basin of hot water, since he will wash himself. She explains that as long as there is water, she can heat it up. The man says that everything is fine, and the woman is surprised. The woman says she'll need a towel to dry herself off, and the girl thanks her, and the woman turns to Luke and asks if he'll get it. Nagoro Kaito explains that cats don't usually like baths, but he is a native Japanese and finds baths a great way to relieve stress. The woman explains that he can take a long bath and then ask her to clean it up, and he tells her that he is alive again, so much has happened and how nice it is under the starry sky. She says she's interested in watching. The other explains that she's also interested, and Nagoro Kaito is surprised, asking if it's such an unusual sight. He says he will clean the water himself, and she asks if they use the towel themselves too. Nagoro Kaito sits down by the wooden bathtub and then shakes himself, throwing off the water. He says that he feels very good and he is grateful for it. She says she'll help him dry off, and he explains that he's clean and happy that Mrs. Lilfley is drying him so thoroughly. Nagoro Kaito asks to be buried in the girl's chest, and she explains that one must think about prime numbers that are divisible only by themselves in one, and remembers that these are odd numbers. He tells Luke to listen to him, and the girl explains that if he can just boil water, he can prepare a large container of water for her, and wonders what prime numbers are. Nagoro Kaito explains that heating water is a labor-intensive process, and aristocrats like to take baths in hot water, and is surprised that he quickly figured out how to use it, He says he just needs to control the temperature, and to do that he needs to spend fuel and watch the water, and he wonders if he should open a public bathhouse. He explains that the main thing is to find water in some kind of container, and asks Lady Clarissa if there is something big for water. She says it's a coffin and refuses, explaining that it doesn't fit at all. She explains that she'll ask her uncle to get her a full bath and is surprised by how sweetly the cat smiles. And he says that she clearly hasn't thought her idea through. Nagoro Kaito says it won't be difficult for him and notes that Lilfly is smart. He explains that you can use solid wood, brick or stone to create a bathtub, make a drain and plug, and use magic to create a waterproof finish, and explains that you can't leave the bathtub outside if you're going to use it. Nagoro Kaito tells her that he recently wandered in the mountains and now has a beautiful house, and she says that from now on she will enjoy the life of a pet, and wonders if it is really just a pet. He says that after the bath it was already late and a busy day was coming to an end. But it's not that simple. Nagoro Kaito explains that he needs to decide where he will sleep and asks to borrow a blanket so he can sleep in the corner of the hallway. She says that she will be with him and that she is his owner. The man explains that he cannot allow his daughter to sleep with such a strange and suspicious cat. And the woman says that Luke has a talent for magic and she could teach him magic before bed. Nagoro Kaito explains that he is ultimately satisfied. He explains that he will stay sleeping next to Clarissa until she falls asleep, then go study magic with Lilfly, and explains that as a cat he has the right to choose where to sleep. Nagoro Kaito is sleeping and he is looking away. He says that Clarissa quickly fell asleep and he came to Mrs. Lilfly, explaining that knocking wouldn't work, so he'd have to scratch the door. Nagoro Kaito says good evening to Ms. Leafly. He approaches the door. She invites him in. He admires her figure and internally argues with himself, but eventually agrees to come in. Nagoro Kaito explains that there is no point in hoping for anything shameless today, and says that her behavior is understandable because she thinks of him as a cat, but it still hurts his heart. He asks if she's cold and offers to put something on top. She thanks him for his concern and explains that her body temperature is high due to her magical powers. And he remarks that in games, mages dress like that for fan service. She says that she is lucky with her talent for water magic, which allows her to easily cool her body, while those who use only fire magic have the hardest time, and in especially severe cases they are bedridden due to constant fever. She explains that mages learn to control their body temperature and asks Nagoro Kaito if he knows about it. And he says that he didn't feel either cold or hot while descending the mountain and suggests that it might be due to his fur or resistance to the elements. She suggests starting with the basics, and he says he's listening carefully. She explains that she has cat magic and will try to answer questions, but most often she will say that she does not know, and also talks about controlling magical power through meditation, and Nagoro Kaito understands. She explains that when meditating you need to be as steadfast as a rock if the element is earth, fluid like water if the element is water, energetic and sharp if the element is fire, and dissolve in the wind if the element is wind, and he says that she knows nothing about cat magic. He says he can imagine himself surrounded by cats, and then explains that it's clearly not that. She explains that she knows nothing about the subject and that even famous magicians are unlikely to answer, and Nagoro Kaito suggests putting it off until later, after which they begin experimenting with her imitation skill. He explains that it was very reminiscent of the association game, and says that they have definitely confirmed the ability to imitate only what you ate in a past life. He explains that associations are flexible and can be based on color, shape, name, or composition, then describes the sequence of transformations from bûche de Noël to shortbread, honey ice cream, rice, and sugar, then explains that bread is baked from wheat flour and salt, and is surprised that bread. He explains that he can use it to create any delicious thing and says that as long as he has enough imagination. Nagoro Kaito explains that he won't be creating firearms, carvings, or vessels, but would like to have a truck and warns against making a mess in the room. She is silent and then Luke speaks. Nagoro Kaito explains that he is not a god, but a victim of a divine game, and she explains that he really is a god and asks why he descended to their lands, and offers to choose a temple or the capital. He explains that he is an ordinary cat and if he had a choice, he would have been lucky that the spirit of the wind brought him here, and it was all just a coincidence. She is surprised that he actually communicated with the spirit and saw the blessing of the wind spirit. He says that without the fateful meeting with the spirit he would have died in the mountains, explains that only people with great magical power can communicate with her, and thanks her for the fact that thanks to her he got here. She asks if they have ever communicated with the spirit of the wind, and he replies that of course not, and notes the elasticity. Nagoro Kaito explains that only 3 mages can talk to spirits. He talks about the court mage Lushan and his apprentice Aisha, and the girl says that spirits are dangerous and it is better not to talk about them. She explains that she hasn't personally met any spirits, but such people aren't found in every country, and if you understand spirits you'll be immediately taken into the royal palace. And he's surprised that this is an even rarer talent than he thought. She explains that the wind spirit is kind to people or cats and that meeting them is a great blessing, while Nagoro Kaito explains the popular idiom about traveling guided by the wind spirit. She says that she didn't think that he met a real wind spirit and is sure that her uncle was also very surprised. And he says that he will have to thank the great creature the next time he meets her. Nagoro Kaito explains that he understands that a title is something intangible and says that he is interested in how they work and who gives them. She says that she doesn't fully understand what titles are, and he explains that there is no specific research on them, and there is an opinion that titles are granted by higher beings, but some are clearly obtained differently. He explains that he probably got the title of cat hero for saving a cat from a car, and another asks if he understands where he got such titles from. He says that he received 3 grades of English thanks to his level of knowledge of English, and explains that he wrote about a higher level in his resume, but in this world it didn't work out. The udon master explains that he used to work part-time at a noodle shop and asks if he can cut it in French, and he explains that he was really good at making udon back then. Nagoro Kaito says there is one, and she explains that she doesn't quite understand the meaning of the title miracle worker and is seeing him for the first time, and he says that there is no need to talk about the blessing of the wind spirit and the servant of the tomato. He says it's a shame he's so difficult, and she explains that, aside from blessed by the spirit of the wind, she's seeing almost all of his titles for the first time. She explains that titles are rare, but that several people can receive them, and explains that her amount of information is limited, and he says that God gave all of this when he came into this world and thanks him for his help. She explains that if this is the case, then there must be a suitable title, but Nagoro Kaito does not have such a title and he refuses it, explaining that it would prove divinity and he does not want that. He explains that lottery winner or something similar would be best, but he thinks it's best to leave it as is. Nagoro Kaito closes the door, the woman says good night, and he stretches and says that the day was good after all. He is happy that he was able to find a home for himself and is coping well with his first cat life, and then he thinks that this could be the work of a higher being who has done a lot for him. Nagoro Kaito thanks the great supreme being who sits far away in the heavens. He is surprised. He says that he was just in Mrs. Lilfly's garden, and now he suddenly found himself in a white space. Nagoro Kaito is surprised by the familiar feeling and voice, explaining that it is the voice of a higher being. He says that he came back a bit early and asks what Luke's reunion with the Supreme Being will bring. Nagoro Kaito is surprised that he closed his eyes and the Supreme Being greets him. He says that only 4 minutes have passed since landing and that's too fast, and he explains that the interlocutor now has a different name and he really is a superior cat. Nagoro Kaito says that the name Luke is good and suitable, explains that the rook in chess has no limits, and he is surprised by the strange words of the older cat, who says that Luke did not team up with the bears and did not destroy humanity, although that was the plan. He explains that he was just in the garden looking at the stars, and the other cat asks why he was there, and he says that he used the connection with Akasha. Nagoro Kaito explains that he put his paws together and began praying in the direction of this place, causing his consciousness to be transferred here, and he is surprised that he is hearing about this for the first time and thinks about the connection with Akasha as a hotline between him and the Supreme Being. He explains that the skill is not that simple. He says that Luke was transported here because of a prayer, and also explains that Luke was the first to implement modern technology, and is surprised that he is a guinea pig. Nagoro Kaito is surprised that she can hear him and explains that the connection with Akasha is a connection between him and the universe, but he is currently at a low level of access, so the connection is limited. He explains that Akasha is a treasure trove of information and warns that if one cannot withstand the enormous amount of knowledge, the personality can be destroyed, so one must be careful. Nagoro Kaito says that he is not the final boss, but just a cat, and explains though. He says she said he was the first one who was able to realize the ability. Nagoro Kaido says that he is not the only one reincarnated and that there have been several people from the same world in human form throughout history, and another man wonders who knows. He says that their department mainly deals with cats and organizes the reincarnation of cats and other animals into different worlds. Nagoro Kaido explains that free agents do not belong to organizations and are sometimes mistaken for gods or aliens, and explains that there are many such agents, including former magicians, strange creatures, and infamous individuals. He explains that some of the living creatures are the result of their experiments, but most are not, and explains that living creatures are still very interesting. Nagoro Kaido says that he too could one day become such a being, capable of using the connection with Akasha, and he explains that she speaks like a mad scientist. He explains that his ability to mimic is based on his connection with Akasha, and he is surprised that she is the same way. Nagoro Kaido explains that all taste data is stored in the Akasha and is extracted and reproduced through imitation, and he asks if this is a convenient thing. He says he can turn firewood into a cake, and explains that there are no side effects or limits on the amount of use, and the ability reproduces data about what was eaten, preserving the composition, but with an excess of sweet or salty food, consequences are possible. He explains that you can experiment a little with the size, but if the difference between the original item and what it is transformed into is too great, then it is impossible. She says there is no limit to the number of uses and explains the impossibility of recreating animals in a living state, while Nagoro Kaido talks about the problems with recreating people in speech. He explains that the technology works on bacteria, viruses, and euglenas but not on ticks and similar creatures, which is a current limitation, and calls it cheating. Nagoro Kaido explains that it is impossible to use living animals as material, but the successful recreation in the material world was a big surprise and is suitable for beginners. He is surprised and says that this is an encyclopedia of animals or an encyclopedia of people. Nagoro Kaido explains that with this one can learn the abilities and character of people and animals that one has encountered, but if one uses Akasha in its original form, there will be too much information, and explains that only excerpts are presented here. He explains that only he will be able to see the books and is surprised that it is really the third size. Nagoro Kaido says that for higher beings there is no concept of personal space, and explains that she is still a cat, and then expresses regret that it would be better if he did not see this. He explains that magical power is quite strong for a human, and that the average grade for most people is a D, and is surprised that it is much lower than he thought. It is explained that grades from S to A represent strength from strong to expert, D and E are normal and weak grades, and F represents a person with a disability, while those with an S grade are considered a mythical hero. Nagoro Kaido explains that Leafy's intelligence and magic power are B rank, and that her poor leadership is due to her shyness, and explains that combat power reflects her ability to fight and allows her to compete with the best. He explains that there are many nuances. D is the base, and magical power and intelligence at level B are impressive to a person, and cat strength is quite high, and he is surprised. Nagoro Kaido says he thought about ignoring the cat power, but she explains that this numerical value shows the affection for cats, and the higher the better, otherwise the person will die a horrible death. He explains that the indicator is very useful and the characteristics with magical power here are very diverse and can show a lot. Nagoro Kaido explains that he is in an animal encyclopedia and invites them to look at himself, then explains that he was not originally an animal. He says he has cheater characteristics, but he is still considered a newborn, and asks what awaits him in adulthood. Nagoro Kaido asks what a plus sign in a grade means and then wonders what can turn into a cool tiger, while another explains that grades can change and show disadvantages or advantages. He explains that his appearance will not change, but the rage of a demigod or king of beasts will activate, and in rage he will become noticeably stronger, essentially a berserker mode. Nagoro Kaido warns to be careful, explains that it is better not to use a dangerous thing, and then explains that the rest of the assessments concern magical skills and it is better to put this off for now. He explains that this is the influence of mental resistance S and says that with such a high resistance his spirit is only at what a cowardly guy he is, and he is indignant that he was called cowardly. Nagoro Kaido explains that intelligence is judged by the average of knowledge from a past life and the current world, and warns against jumping to conclusions, as ability is more important than character. He says, and explains that the most important thing is that cat magic is an A, and everything else is secondary. Nagoro Kaido is surprised that he doesn't know how to use the book, and the other cat explains that he wasn't taught cat magic and is surprised that he didn't even go to kindergarten. He says that in the previous world magic didn't exist, but considering that their star was the sun, nothing can be done, and explains that cat magic is available to every cat. The higher the rating, the more powerful and effective it is. He explains that the fireball takes the shape of a cat, increasing its power and becoming homing, and explains that the key is to imagine that you are launching a fire cat. Nagoro Kaido explains that there are ice cats and thunder cats, and despite their peculiarities, he is confident that the interlocutor will quickly master it, and he agrees and asks if he can drop by again using the Akasha connection. He explains that time passes differently here and there and says that it's best not to check on him too often, and then says that they chat for about 7 minutes. Nagoro Kaido says that such jokes can give you a heart attack and can't believe that the difference is so huge, and he explains that a week has passed from below. He is surprised that he is lying there and asks how Clarissa, Lil Fly and the senior tomatoes are, and also clarifies that the week. Nagoro Kaido explains that the body is in a state of sleep, time cannot be turned back, the probability of success is low, the lifespan of the world is about 20 billion years, and he can write an explanatory note. He says that there is no need to return anything and asks to just tell him how to get back, and he explains that Clarissa is now crying and asks her to hold on. Nagoro Kaido explains that the exit is over there and says goodbye, wanting to enjoy his cat life, and the other cat explains that they work in shifts, so next time there might be someone else in his place. He wakes up in a basket, opening his eyes and noticing something nearby. Nagoro Kaido notices frozen tomatoes for a snack, returns to Clarissa's bedroom and tells her that she is sweetly snoring in her sleep, and Lil Phil is also sleeping next to her. He says he slept for 7 days and feels no problems with his body, but he notices that his claws have grown and he needs a scratching post. Nagoro Kaido says that they are both asleep and asks not to wake them up in the middle of the night, then explains that he doesn't know what to do. It is said that in this world there are 3 moons, large, middle and small, and the spirit called them the first, second and third moon. Nagoro Kaido explains that the spirit said that the largest moon is closest to the planet and the smallest one is farthest away, and explains that the first moon may be a spaceship observing the world. He says he lost his parents early and was raised by his grandparents, who then also passed away 4 years apart. He says that he had many friends who were there for him, and even when he cried all night, he knew that he was supported during the day, but now he remembers those days with warmth, although he misses the past world, does not want to return there, and believes that it is much more interesting for him here, and the cat's body turned out to be very comfortable. Nagoro Kaido says that he has a desire to live next to beautiful women, and he has 2 cute ones, Clarissa and Lil Fly. He is surprised. He tells Lux that even though it is already late, he says hello and asks if it is a good morning. She screams that it's Luke and hugs him and then cries and says that he opened his eyes expressing gratitude to God. He apologizes and explains that he was actually communicating with the goddess, and Nagoro Kaido notices that she is in tears. Lady Clarissa is surprised that he was still asleep. He explains that he was prepared for Lady Clarissa's tears, and she says that Sister Lil already warned him. She screams and cries, and Nagoro Kaido explains that Luke is a demigod. His dream can be different from a human's, and she shouldn't have worried so much. Everything is fine. He realizes that he injured Lilfi, not Clarissa. Then she tells Luke morning, and he replies good morning. Nagoro Kaido explains that his conscience was tormenting him greatly, and she says that Mrs. Lilfly cried for an hour, and they comforted her. She explains briefly in general, and the other one listens. Nagoro Kaido explains that he spoke with the goddess for 7 minutes, and here 7 days have passed, and says that that's all. He explains that he will hide the part about the goddess in the form of a cat, and the girl is surprised and says that it is a goddess. Then he turns to Luke. She explains that if he met her, he would find out why she gave him this power, and he says that this is his assumption, but all for the sake of an experiment. He says he doesn't know what he can achieve or what he will do, and Nagoro Kaido thinks she wants to watch him and doesn't seem bothered by the intervention of divine power. He explains that observing her is purely to kill time, and that is his assumption. Nagoro Kaido says that he just came up with an idea that is not that far from the truth, and explains that the attitude of the higher beings is very selfish, and she says that she does not care about the goals of the gods, but she knows that the gift of the gods gave them him, and this is important to her. He explains that a gift is simply something that is customarily given without a reason, and says that one does not have to think about it, but rather simply enjoy the gift without attaching importance to the purpose. Lady Clarissa says that she considers him free and suggests that he spend his free time as he wishes, and Nagoro Kaito admires her and reflects on the fact that it does not matter why he is here and what he wants to do. He says that he wants to be of use to Lady Clarissa and the Riedelhain family, to create a sleeping environment around himself, and also explains that this is his second life, so he wants to live a calm and leisurely life. Nagoro Kaito tells Luke that he owes him cake as an apology, and one of the girls is surprised and repeats the word cake. He explains that this is not the best dish for a late snack and that if you eat it at a late hour, it is too heavy for the stomach, and she listens. Nagoro Kaito says that it is possible to free the plate, and he notices this and responds. She says they'll have something lighter, strawberries and fluffy waffles. Nagoro Kaito says he turned tomatoes on ice into strawberries because of their red color, then into strawberries and waffles, and one of the girls is surprised. She says it's delicious, and the other explains what they liked. He asks what he has to hide, and tells that in the past world he was an avid sweet eater. He says that he couldn't afford sweets all the time, but he tried everything at his friend's bakery and periodically bought himself expensive and tasty things, including strawberry waffles. Nagoro Kaito explains that Leafly's smile has returned and that he must protect her and monitor her mental state so that she doesn't go into full-blown Yandere mode. He explains that in a past life, Radar saved his life by showing affection and then disgust, and admits that he is talking nonsense. Nagoro Kaito says that he needs to apologize to Mr. Rise. He explains that his father is away on business and will return today or tomorrow, and she is surprised and considers this cruel. He explains that he didn't know she was sleeping the whole time and is surprised that it's perfectly simple. She tells that an epidemic has spread in the area, due to which the population has significantly decreased, and explains that her parents, brothers, and sisters have died, so she could only rely on her uncle. He says that his father is often away, and asks if the master is busy, and the cat calls her master. She says that she was young then and felt relieved when she returned home, and Nagoro Kaito says that the family has an older son, Claude, but he explains that he is studying at a military academy in the capital, and if he returns, he will need to be properly greeted, and she thinks out loud. She tells her mother that she is sick and that is why she does not live here, and her mother is surprised. Nagoro Kaito asks if she is alive. The girl explains that when she recovers, Nagoro Kaito will meet her, and Nagoro Kaito says that he will wait for that day. She says that it's clear from Clarissa's face that things aren't going well for her, and he wonders if there's anything he can do. She says that before Sasha woke them up, they decided to go to bed. Mr. Rise is supposed to be home this evening, so the servants are busy with work, and Nagoro Kaito decided to check the human encyclopedia in his free time. He says he'll look at Clarissa and Rise first and explains how their abilities are rated on a scale from D to S. Nagoro Kaito explains that Clarith is very intelligent, although he sees her for the first time, and believes that Ures has skills in spearmanship, archery, business skills, and politics, while Clarith has negotiation skills. He explains that it is unlikely that the hero has unique abilities, but if so, he is a force to be reckoned with, and notes that he has many high ratings. The man explains that Rise is also good at many things and has been highly praised by a supreme being, and Nagoro Kaito muses that a promising military career might suit him and that his cat strength is low due to his love for dogs, so it needs to be raised. He explains that all the servants have roughly the same stats and housework, but they have low scores in magic and combat, although in principle it will do, and he is surprised. Nagoro Kaito is amazed by Sasha Grantram's fighting prowess, and he explains that maids who are also good bodyguards are a great option for aristocrats. He says that he hadn't thought about it before, but he is surprised that Sasha is the daughter of the Knight Commander, and wonders what kind of person her father is if his daughter is so capable. He says he is not joking, explains that he still knows little about him, and tells that he came to his house the day before leaving, and the other says that he understands the seriousness and asks for forgiveness. Nagoro Kaito says that as long as he stays at home and doesn't cause trouble, she'll put up with it, although she doesn't believe he won't cause trouble. He says that since he told her he can get to know her, another one confirms, a third one explains that they haven't had dinner yet, and a fourth one is happy about this. Nagoro Kaito is surprised, and she tells him that Mr. Rise returned home on a carriage. He says that Mr. Rise has returned safely. Nagoro Kaito says he was sleeping. She explains that Sasha already scolded him, but he slept through it all, and the man asks what happened here while he was away. The man explains that it's logical for the cat to sleep all day. He says he doesn't think the cat was in a coma for 7 days. Then the man introduces Luke. He explains that his old friend and knight commander, Yoldarius Grantrim, accompanied and protected him during the journey, and asks to be called simply Yold, expressing his joy at meeting Mr. Cat. Nagoro Kaito explains that he is Lady Clarissa's pet and his name is Luke, and the man is surprised and laughs, realizing that he is Sasha's father. One says it's amazing that a cat can talk and be intelligent, and the other one explains that it really is. He apologizes for being rude and says that he didn't believe it when they told him about her. And Nagoro Kaito explains that he understands the confusion perfectly well and hopes that his behavior did not offend. He explains that in this world it is more important to become an owl, and understands that they are, after all, old friends, and he says that they need to check the encyclopedia of people so that this does not look strange. Nagoro Kaito is surprised that Yoldarius Grantrim has the first human title and has the power of a, and also asks what this even means. He says that he has no weak points and the ability to detect surprise, and he explains that his wife is currently away, but will definitely introduce her to them upon her return. He asks if they know Mr. Rise well and if they went to the same school. Nagoro Kaito is amazed at Lord Rise's skill with a spear and bow, who explains that he was a caravan guard and taught him to fight, which is how he became a viscount, and also says that when he was a simple merchant they were his own and he was unaware of the inheritance of the title. He says he was able to meet a talking cat and he creates an impression. Nagoro Kaito explains that the man appears rude, but hides a kind heart and charisma, and the woman explains that now it is clear why Mr. Rise keeps him around, and that on this day the dinner was richer, with roast venison and dishes with soy sauce. Sasha silently gives him another portion, and he says that with the help of imitation he could repeat it, but it's still nice that they show such care. He explains that the business negotiations were successful, but again noticed the weakness of the craftsmen in their area, and talks about a specialized craft in the county, where craftsmen compete in skills which has a positive effect on the products. He says that compared to this they do not produce anything special and explains that he would like to export something special from their territory. She says that the goods produced by Lilfly are too limited, and he explains that perhaps it is worth considering the option of exporting agricultural products, and local residents can also produce them. Nagoro Kaito says that, in this case, the possibility of selling tomato lords could be considered. He explains that tomatoes are easy to grow, produce a bountiful harvest, and are suitable for cooking, and says this is a great opportunity to promote the tomatoes, which he is grateful for as they saved him from starvation. He explains that tomato sauce is used in ketchup, meat sauce, and tomato ragu, as well as in omuresu, doria, bouillabaisse, and tomato risotto, and explains that the tomato brings a variety of flavors and can serve as a condiment, not just an ingredient. He says that in his past life he completely gave up alcohol, women, and smoking, but never denied himself food, explaining that with the help of imitation he can fulfill all his dreams by creating lycopene through associations. He explains to Luke that the servants had already recommended them and a little time had passed, but nothing had happened to them. The man says that there will be a lot of work and asks for help. 3 people say that they have rated the vegetables as excellent and need to use them, and Nagoro Kaito happily agrees to help, explaining that they know almost nothing about this vegetable and can only rely on him. He explains that the red balls have changed shape and the harvest was large, while the other says that they have already collected everything, but new green fruits are growing in their place, and the plant as a whole has also changed. Nagoro Kaito explains that he can sell pepper, but he must not overdo it so as not to attract the attention of other aristocrats, and is surprised by this. He says that he won't be able to hide his abilities from Mr. Rise, who has already become suspicious, and explains that he needs to tell him something, recalling the words of his late grandfather. He says that he doesn't have enough knowledge yet and will only speak based on his guesses, while the other listens. Nagoro Kaito thanks him, explains that he remained silent because he thought no one would believe him, says that he met a goddess and received a special gift, and if the cat exclaims that God exists and that he is a cat, no one will believe him. He tells her that he recently met the goddess in a dream and learned the details of her abilities, and she explains that Lady Lilfly did not use magical evaluation. Nagoro Kaido tells Luke to stop and wait a minute, and Luke explains that he decided to skip the details and asks if it's possible to meet a goddess that easily. He says that he met not exactly a goddess but an employee who sends people to other worlds, and explains that she was in the form of a cat because she works with cats, and they also work in shifts there. Nagoro Kaido says he doesn't understand anything and asks the cat that he is God's messenger, but the cat explains that he remains silent to avoid any misunderstandings. He says that if a person simply meets a king, he does not become his servant, and here it is approximately the same rule, and then he explains that in essence he was simply left here and wishes him a successful cat life. She tells Luke that he is not a messenger of the goddess, but someone she simply helped, and explains that it is better to call her a friend of the goddess, and he is surprised at her intelligence. Nagoro Kaido explains that in reality everything is much more complicated, but this is the simplest option, and clarifies that it is not quite so. He explains that he is a test subject and is using what he was given. The man says so, and he thanks for the reminder and confirms that there is a connection, and he asks what the connection is between the goddess and Senor Tomato. He explains that his ability allows him to simulate what he ate in a past life, be it a vegetable, fruit, or dessert, and explains that this can be considered a recreation. Nagoro Kaido explains that he changed the shape of the red ball and can change the shape of objects if he finds an association. The man says that with such an ability he will be considered a god. Nagoro Kaido understands this, and the man addresses him as Mr. Luke. He says that he is not a god, but a cat, and explains that he cannot become the god of the new world. Nagoro Kaido explains that he is still a normal cat and would not like to abuse his ability, and she says that they won't believe it until they see it. He speaks then, and he explains that his gaze is full of expectations. Nagoro Kaido says it may sound presumptuous, but he will let you make dessert. He says that he has decided to show his abilities to Mr. Rise and asks Sasha to bring the necessary ingredients. She says she brought the vegetables they asked for. He thanks her and explains that he will use the orange radishes first. Nagoro Kaido talks about the variety of radishes and their taste, and the man asks if he can put the vegetable on his plate and gets the okay. He says he'll change this orange radish right now. He says just imagine the imitation. The other one is surprised, and then he says the pear cheese tart is ready. He explains that it's baked goods, and she says that it's something new and they're both surprised. Nagoro Kaido explains how he transformed the recipe and offers Sasha a try, and she shyly asks permission, while the man explains that girls like sweets, and Nagoro Kaido plans to ingratiate himself with Sasha. He explains that it is actually a pear cheese tart and says that he tried it outside of a pastry shop. He says that in high school, a farmer friend bought several dozen unripe pears before a typhoon, so he suggested making pear desserts, advertised them with the help of a teacher, and they managed to sell them, and she hopes that everyone will like the taste of the desserts. He says he'll try. Nagoro Kaido is surprised by the taste of the sweet cheese and says he can't remember the last time he ate something like this. He says it's delicious and asks Sasha to find out how to cook it. She says it's sweet and delicious and asks what it is. She says that Lil's sister is delicious, and she confirms that it is indeed very delicious. Nagoro Kaido says that the magic of sweets has completely worked and everyone liked his desserts for the first time. He explains that the fruit is made from a pear, which usually grows in the fall, and explains that he used a tart base, asking if the interlocutor has one. He explains that the dough can only be bought in expensive stores in the capital and there is no sugar in it, and he says that the filling is amazing and there is something white inside like cheese. Nagoro Kaido says it's cheese, and he explains that he can't believe there's fruit from another world in there, and he doesn't remember ever having dough that tasted like that. The man explains that it's a mixture of cream cheese and fresh cream, and the fruit adds a tartness, and that the cheese from their farm will have a different texture. But he questions the presence of flavorings and notes that there is no sugar yet. He asks to forgive him, explains that the task was to show his abilities, and tells him to forget about the taste of the tart, because the taste struck him too much. Nagoro Kaido explains that he would like to continue the conversation about blue tomatoes, admits his guilt for replacing the red balls with tomatoes, and believes that abilities are best hidden, and the man understands and says that telling him and his daughter was pointless. He says that he thinks that Rise himself understands what will happen when this is discovered, and the other explains that because of Master Luke's abilities a war could start. He is surprised by the word war. Nagoro Kaido says that imitation has enormous potential and can be used to control the economy. Explains that this is not an exaggeration, and says that among the sweets he ate, there were those that contained gold leaf, and he has not yet told anyone about this. He explains that although he has never eaten gold bars, he can create them in large quantities in solid form, and he understands that this will definitely work. Nagoro Kaido says that he tried it once, but quickly gave up and thinks that it is better that no one knows, and the man explains that it is necessary to keep it a secret from outsiders, but it all depends on how this power is used. The girl asks her father to remember the existence of legends and explains how everything usually works, and he asks who Clarissa is. She explains that people who have tried to use God's miracles have ended badly, and explains that her father is now at a crossroads and must decide whether to become Luke's friend or die. Nagoro Kaido is surprised that Lady Clarissa hasn't been reincarnated with memories from her past life either, and the man explains what he wants to say and asks if he understands. She believes that the only right decision is to let Luke do what he wants, and explains that you can ask him for help or advice, but if you use him forcefully, he will leave. Nagoro Kaido says that he agrees with her words first of all, but it is necessary for his peaceful life, and she explains that if they want him to help, they shouldn't use divine power, otherwise they can quickly go astray. He explains that he would like to help spread the tomatoes, and explains that Lady Clarissa has a point, so he needs to think carefully about how to use his ability. He explains that he will keep interference to a minimum, since he knows little about this world and knows almost nothing about his capabilities, and Nagoro Kaido hopes that the tactic worked and he is not angry, noticing that for some reason he cannot stop his hands from shaking. He explains that this is necessary so that he understands the danger of his ability. Nagoro Kaido explains that his ability can change the course of battle and affect the economy, so he prefers to remain inconspicuous and plans to develop the local cuisine to prepare more diverse dishes. He says that in his past life he wasn't popular with girls, but now he can be, and he wants to treat Lady Lilfi and Lady Clarissa with sweets. Nagoro Kaido says that Lady Clarith wanted to take a hot bath, which requires a bath itself, and Rise explains that this requires a good fire mage or hot springs, and only the highest-ranking aristocrats can maintain such a bath. He says he can make hot water out of any water, and the man asks to leave the water for him. He is surprised that this is possible and says that then something will have to be done with the used water, and she explains that she can make the water clean, evaporate it, or make it liquid again. The man says he's leaving everything to his interlocutor, and Nagoro Kaido explains that at least a small hut is needed to install a bath, and suggests they quickly get down to business. He says that he saw a suitable place near Mrs. Lilfly's house and asks if they have a craftsman who can build a hut there. Nagoro Kaido explains that he and Mrs. Lilfly have already discussed a small house, and he says that with his ability he can check the entire system. He says he'll call the repairman from the city and asks if a negotiator is needed, and she explains that she'll handle it herself and won't bother anyone else. Nagoro Kaido says that he leaves the matter to his interlocutor, since he has little understanding of architecture and should not talk to others, and he is surprised that Mrs. Lilfly is not too shy and doubts whether he should leave it to her. She smiles and laughs quietly. Nagoro Kaido says that they have already discussed this, explains that Lady Clarissa will be communicating with the builders at the request of Lady Lilfly, and notes that Lady Clarissa is a very smart girl, and also that it is good that they advanced the idea of using divine power. She says that she is proud to be her owner's pet, and that this is exactly what she expected from her. She says that she has achieved freedom of action and the absence of orders for him, and he explains that this is great for him. Nagoro Kaido smiles as two girls stand behind him, one of whom is talking and the other is listening attentively. He speaks Mr. Yold. Nagoro Kaido says good morning. He explains that today the interlocutor is without Lady Clarice, and the interlocutor explains that Yold addresses Viscount Rise by his first name, and adds Lady to Clarice. He says that the pet is addressed as Sir, and he is a very polite person. He asks if he has a lot to do today, and he explains that he was thinking of training his subordinates and would not have said that, after which he offers to join. Nagoro Kaido apologizes and explains that he planned to spend the day with Lady Clarice and Mr. Rise. He says he was interested and offers to talk, and he replies that he agrees and is thinking about it. Nagoro Kaido says that here you can chat away from prying eyes. He asks Mr. Luke to answer honestly, and he explains that he is getting down to business. He says that the other person is stronger than him, and Nagoro Kaito is surprised and asks why he suddenly says that. He explains that he is weaker than a child and cannot lift a weapon, and he says that given Yold's A-rank combat characteristics and skills, he is no match for him, but magic can always be used. He says that he has combat experience and can determine the strength of an opponent, and Nagoro Kaito explains that his strength is close to that of a god, although calling him a god is incorrect. He says that the interlocutor is more likely his relative. He explains that he has been feeling immense pressure since their first meeting, and also admits that he was very scared and would not be able to protect Rise and the others if a battle broke out, and notes the cat's divine gaze. Nagoro Kaito is surprised that he is so small and did not expect this, and wonders what scares him so much about an ordinary cat. He explains that his magic is creating delicious food, believes that the interlocutor is mistaken, and decides not to become his enemy, and he is surprised that he angered him. He says that he wants to protect Rise and the others, so he wants to learn about abilities, and asks to show at least a little of his magic. He explains that he will throw the stone as far as possible and offers to use any magic on it. Asking what the interlocutor is good at, fire, water, or wind magic, and Nagoro Kaito is surprised by cat magic. He says that the Supreme Being said that it is worth trying cat magic for dummies. Nagoro Kaito asks him to wait and count down from 10, and the cat explains that he can't hide anything and begins to perform cat magic. He explains that ice can be too unsafe, wind can easily change the trajectory of a stone, lightning can create too much noise, and fire can cause a fire. Nagoro Kaito says that he doesn't have to destroy the object, and then clarifies that then he definitely. He says he's throwing and then throws the object into the sky. Nagoro Kaito says he uses cat magic and the stone cat spell. He is surprised when the cat doll comes to life and meows, after which it suddenly bursts into the ground. Nagoro Kaito is surprised that the cat came out of the stone. He says it is a huge statue in the shape of a cat and doubts whether it should be called a cat, and also wonders how a small stone could turn into such a gigantic statue. He screams and delivers a powerful blow, causing an explosion on the ground. Nagoro Kaito shouts that it is him, and he is surprised that it is Kaito. He yells that's it, then curses when the cat bites his sword, after which he is surprised and asks what's going on. Nagoro Kaito is surprised that he broke a good sword and is afraid of the consequences, and the cat statue asks to return to its previous form and meows. He wonders how many cat lives he will have to work off for an expensive sword, and the man remains silent. Then he explains that his name is Luke. He apologizes for the ability test and admits it was stupid of him, explaining that he didn't expect that. He says that with such power one can easily take all the lands, and apologizes for being rude, explaining that he did not doubt them, otherwise they would have taken everything long ago. He hopes that he can be forgiven and explains that he should apologize, and Nagoro Kaito wonders why his behavior is constantly changing and calls him a versatile person. He explains that he accidentally turned the stone into a cat because he wanted to show that it was harmless, and the cat says that he is not yet used to using magic. Nagoro Kaito says he's very sorry for breaking his sword. He explains that the sword is indeed broken, but is made of pater ore, and the cat calls him Master Luke. Nagoro Kaito says that the sword is not particularly expensive, but not particularly cheap either, and he is glad that his conscience would not bother him if it were a keepsake or his father's sword. He explains that the ore allows one to create a sword for fighting magic that bends and becomes soft like a rope, and also says that the sword is inconvenient as a weapon, but is often used in self-defense due to its lightness. Nagoro Kaito explains that it is impossible to break him with one blow, especially if the blow is magical, and says that he now looks so strong that he can easily destroy a squad of knights. He explains that he was a fool and immediately understood that he would not be able to overcome, but as the guardian of the estate he would like to ask something. He asks who they are, why they came here and what they are going to do, and Nagoro Kaito understands his concerns and explains that he will have to answer honestly. He says that he is a simple cat from another world and he has no specific goal. Nagoro Kaito says he'd like to live a worry-free life, expand local tomato cuisine, and relax in a bath. He laughs and explains that everything is clear, and he is surprised. The man explains PF. He asks for forgiveness and explains that even if he has the opportunity, he does not intend to use force, and also says that the sage understands when pain is not needed, and peace and tranquility are closer. Nagoro Kaido says that he is just a cat, and the man explains that he also wanted to ask something, and Nagoro Kaido admits that he forgot about it. He explains that he would like to meet one person. She reveals that the woman on the bed is Viscount Rise's wife and Lady Clarissa's mother. He says he wants to show his wife the cat. Nagoro Kaido explains that he heard about his mistress's illness and would like to surprise her, and the man is surprised by the word surprise. He says that he can cure her, and the man is surprised, asking if it is possible, and explains that here's how. Nagoro Kaido says he would like to answer yes, but if it is a disease from his world, then perhaps it will work. He says he didn't have much hope and is surprised why they are asking him, and the woman explains that he is a bad liar, and he says that he tried at first but says that they are the same. He explains that he is ready to introduce Lady Vertel, and Nagoro Kaido says that he can handle it without any problems. He thanks her for the delivery, is surprised by the name Lady Vertel, and explains that it is still 30 minutes away, and it is a 20-minute walk to the city. He explains that she moved as far away as possible to avoid infecting Lady Clarissa and specifically isolated herself from everyone. Nagoro Kaido explains that he knows where she is now, but he won't open the door, and even then she asks him to leave everything at the door, and he explains that the residents bring food, and he delivers clothes and bedding. He explains that she comes from a family of merchants and manages her household on her own, but he is surprised that she cooks and walks on her own, thinking that everything is bad for her. The man explains that he is finishing up a bathroom plan, and the woman asks what happened, after which the cat says that they decided to have lunch together in the city. She says she'll go too. The man explains that it is no place for a viscount's daughter, and that Luke asked to show him his favorite restaurant with very spicy food. The girl wishes him luck and warns him to be careful, and Nagoro Kaido understands that she sometimes loses heart. She says she doesn't tolerate spicy food well and doesn't want to walk around the city, and he explains that he sells ice and hires servants and guards. He says that such a beautiful magician as Lady Lilfley is always at the mercy of kidnappers, explains that it is better for her not to leave the estate once again, and she leaves a sweet gift and says that magicians, it seems, are really very valuable. He talks about 3 desserts: log, bûche de Noël, and tiramisu. She is surprised and says that they haven't tried this yet. He explains that they changed the vegetables yesterday, but it turns out that it is useful to make the log edible, and he adds that they have never seen anything like this before, and she says that the power is amazing. Nagoro Kaido explains that if you think about it, it's more of an imitation and a sacrifice of a log, rather than a transformation. He explains that he's sending out information about the field, and then the cake appears, and he muses that this power may be much more logical than he thinks. He explains that this is a complex issue in botany and biology. Primitive organic matter evolved into plants and animals. Perhaps Akasha collects such information, and tells that everything emerged from primordial matter, including cats, people, and tomatoes, and that they can return to primordial matter. Nagoro Kaido explains that he is using Akasha to obtain data, finds it logical, and wonders where he ended up. He says that after crossing the river they will be in the city, and the cat explains that he doesn't know how it works exactly and calls him Mr. Luke. He says that the estate is visible, it is huge, and on the other hand it is the Viscount's estate, and in case of an emergency there is enough space to evacuate people and station soldiers. Fortunately, the law has not yet had to be applied for this. Nagoro Kaido explains that their area has a lot of open areas with good patrols, and this serves as a good defense against bandits, and he understands how it works. He says he's heard about a hike through the mountains with shooting star bears, but hasn't met them himself, and the man explains that he doesn't want to go yet, but would like to see them from a safe distance. The man greets Yold and invites him to come to the tavern more often. Yold says hello and says that he thought he was at the estate today, and the woman is interested in Sasha's affairs and asks him to tell her that she wouldn't mind having some tea. He asks what kind of cat it is, and Nagoro Kaido explains that it is Lady Clarissa's pet, who became attached to him, and he decided to show him the city. He says that there are a lot of shops and people here, and that it is a fairly quiet city, and is surprised that there are few adventurers and mercenaries here, after which he turns to him. He explains that given the small size of the territory, there is no need for a guild, but there is one in the county capital, and when a dungeon appears, a branch is usually opened nearby. Nagoro Kaido is surprised by the dungeon and is looking forward to it. He explains that he now understands that such things happen in this world, and Nagoro Kaito says that they don't have anything like that and thanks. He explains that his father was an adventurer and guarded caravans, and then he followed his example and hired Rise, explaining that many go into personal bodyguards. Nagoro Kaito explains that Rise's father died of the plague, and he explains that being an adventurer is hard, but the harsh work pays well. He says that they walked through the city and reached a lonely house, which was located far from the road. Nagoro Kaito says that they are going this way and notices that the house is quite small. He says it's safe here and that the ruler's wife lives in such conditions, surprisingly. He explains that Lady Vertel has never been a spoiled woman, and tells her that she is a wind mage, able to throw back enemies with gusts of wind, send fog for stealth, and lighten the weight of many things. She asks. Nagoro Kaito explains that she can protect herself and says okay. He asks Yold to wait, pretending to be a stray cat, and Yold says he will quickly take a look at her and come back, and agrees to throw a rock at the window to check. Nagoro Kaito thinks it's a bedroom, then decides to be naughty and throws a rock at the window, after which he is surprised. She asks if it's a cat. Nagoro Kaito says the guest is nice and offers to make himself at home, and the cat meows and remarks that the woman resembles Lady Vertel, although she looks older. He says he just wanted to look at her today because she thought she looked healthy, and he explains that he heard her and thinks it's a serious condition in which she coughs a lot and coughs up blood only when she's not having an attack. Nagoro Kaito asks if holy magic can help, and he explains that healing magic activates regeneration in people, but in severe illnesses it can worsen the condition, although ordinary wounds heal without problems. He explains that he is not yet ready to conduct experiments on people due to the failure with the stone cat, and he says that the plague manifested itself in the same way 10 years ago. He explains that the plague was called Peter's fever, which progressed rapidly and led to death, and she explains that Lady Vertel's illness is related to the respiratory tract and develops slowly, and there is no cure for it. He explains that sometimes people recovered, but most cannot be saved. Nagoro Kaito explains that he has an idea and suggests returning, and he apologizes to Lady Vertel for invading his personal space. Vertel Riedelhain explains that she is a human, a 36-year-old female with F physical strength and combat power, B intelligence, C magical power, C charisma, D spirit, 68 cat strength, and B singing, C wind magic, and C household skills. Nagoro Kaito says that her physical strength is in decline, but he is more interested in the next page, which tells about the house where she was born, the events of her childhood, meeting Lord Rise, the birth of her eldest son and Lady Clarissa. It is said that 2 winters ago she was diagnosed with tuberculosis. After an attack she decided to isolate herself and moved away from her family, but the disease continues to progress, and every day she lives in fear of it. Nagoro Kaito explains that the human encyclopedia is written in a language he understands and calls the disease tuberculosis, then joyfully exclaims Bingu. He talks about his past. Nagoro Kaito explains that he had tuberculosis and was treated with antibiotics, which means he can create them through imitation. He explains that he has learned about Lady Vertel's illness through magical analysis and can try to prepare a cure, and the man is surprised and says that he is laughing evilly. He says it works and asks if they can help, and Nagoro Kaito answers uncertainly. He explains that the medicine needs to be taken every day for 6 months, warns about the risk of the disease progressing if taken incorrectly, and suggests leaving the treatment to him and Rise, and he tells her that they need to figure out how to make her take the medicine. He says that thanks to trade connections, he was able to obtain a medicine that can help, and Nagoro Kaito says that it will definitely work. He says that he needs to tell Rise immediately, and he explains that with the help of the encyclopedia he can check the effect of the medicine at any time, and it turns out to be more useful than he imagined. The heroine says that Lady Vertel's illness has been cured, and she will soon return to the estate, but Luke will have other troubles, and explains that it all started with one meeting. He explains that Lady Frederica has gone missing due to the gate incident, and the other man explains that protecting Frederica is more important and he will not abandon her, after which he asks if she is currently at the border of the kingdom of Nurk. Nagoro Kaito tells him that relaxing in the sun is a wonderful pastime for a cat, and he starts talking with a serious expression. She tells Lilfly that she wants to know what element Luke's magic is. She explains that she cannot accurately assess the magic due to lack of knowledge, and he says that there is clearly more than one element and that this should have been expected. She explains that his magic is simply out of this world. She says there's something else, and he explains that it's very important and asks if she thinks he's dangerous. She says that he will not harm people unless they wish him harm, and is confident that he will protect everyone from any threat. He says that it is enough for him to protect Clarissa and explains that she is not so lonely with him, and also says that he does not need him to protect everyone and calls the answer very unexpected. He says she has no friends her age or older brother. She was not allowed to see her mother, and her father is busy managing the territory. He explains that she is not used to complaining, but he understands that her mother is in a deplorable condition and advises her to prepare for the worst in the near future. He says he wants Luke to be there for Clarissa when the time comes, and she nods in response. He reveals that Liffley was also close to her and explains that it's not just Clarissa who needs someone close to her, but Liffley too. He asks Rise if he has a minute, and Rise explains that Luke is with him and asks him to stop. Nagoro Kaito explains that he learned about his wife's illness. The man asks why they became close, and Nagoro Kaito asks him to explain everything himself. He says that he may have succeeded in creating a cure. He asks about the medicine and the white pills, and Nagoro Kaito explains that in his world it was a known disease, and the medicine will only start working after he starts taking it. He explains that if she takes the pneumonia medicine for about 6 months, there is a chance that she will recover, and she asks if she will recover and come back here. Nagoro Kaito says that in his world, this medicine has saved many people and is definitely worth a try, and he explains that he thinks Rise will be able to convince her to take the medicine. He says he found a very rare medicine through his connections and explains that if he thinks he shouldn't tell the truth, then he will do so. Nagoro Kaito says that this is great news, but first wants to ask why he wants to save his wife and whether he has spoken to her, and Luke thinks that it is worth a try. He explains that he just looked from afar, and the man asks a question. Nagoro Kaito explains that Lady Clarissa wanted to introduce him to her mother, and he explains that a good pet should fulfill the wishes of its owner and asks Mr. Rise to help him. He says okay, and she explains that they will try. Nagoro Kaito says the cure has been sorted out and there's nothing to worry about now. He explains that the white powder can be turned into many things, lists salt, flour, starch, and spices, is surprised that with imitation everything can be created, and tells that he has made a batch of medicine for a week, which the knights and servants will give to her. Nagoro Kaito explains that he didn't take drugs in his past life, so he can't become a drug lord cat. She explains that they decided to keep the cure a secret from Clarissa and Lilfly, who doesn't know how to pretend, and he explains that the secret is known only to them and the butler. He reveals that he has prepared medicine in case something happens to him, and explains that the tomato situation has earned him reputation and cooperation, and that he has left the construction of the bath to Lady Clarissa and Lilfly, who say that Clarissa's mother should also get better. Nagoro Kaito says it's time to rest. He explains that he couldn't get enough sleep and calm down, despite the pleasant smell and softness, and the girl is surprised that he dragged her to bed again. Nagoro Kaito says that today we need to find a good place to sleep, and then explains that so. The dog thanks Mr. Luke for coming, and he says he decided to visit the dogs because it's warm here and there are a lot of fluffy dogs. Nagoro Kaito says it will be quite hot and he will be treated like a king, but the dog suggests treating them like a god, warning that it will only get worse. He asks if they want to pass something on to Mr. Rise. The dog replies that there is nothing yet, but if necessary they will definitely pass it on, and he notes that the loyalty of dogs is amazing. Nagoro Kaito says it's important to be a proud pet and follow his example, and he promises to return. He explains that there are a lot of soldiers in the barracks and he doesn't want to sleep among the noisy training, but on the other side of the barracks there is a place that is best suited. It is reported that there is a natural water source there. Nagoro Kaito says that there are centipedes in the trees and that you need to find a place to lie down. He explains that it is cool and beautiful here, and then says that cat magic would be ideal and calls for a stone cat to come out. He suggests fasting together, and the other cat sighs and lies down next to him. Nagoro Kaito says that lying on a smooth and luxurious stone is comfortable and pleasant. The sun is warm, the breeze is blowing, the water is gurgling, and the birds are singing. He says that this is how a cat should live and explains how quiet and calm it is and then gets surprised and asks for forgiveness, asking if he is really a cat. Nagoro Kaido says he is a cat and is surprised by a female voice older than Lady Clarissa's. He explains that he is trying to sleep and is surprised that he is afraid of a stone cat with magical powers, and he explains that he just wanted to lie down and not use it for a fight. Nagoro Kaido asks to tell the truth and asks if he came to take the source by force and capture it, and then denies it. He says he just wanted to sleep and asks who it is, then explains that he doesn't see anyone and feels that there is no one nearby, after which he is surprised by the word spirit. She explains that she is a low-ranking spirit of this source and her name is Stella. Nagoro Kaido is surprised, and she explains that the wind spirit she met was small, but proud and more confident. He explains that the spring spirit seems unsure and different from the wind spirit he met in the mountains. And the cat says, she says that he has the blessing of the wind spirit, and Nagoro Kaido is surprised how she saw that he has the blessing of the wind spirit. He thanks her for saving his life and asks if she knows her, and she explains the difference between the lower and higher spirit and says that this is the point. She says that the higher spirits control the laws of nature. Their power is amazing, they are connected to each other, and the spirit of the wind can be found in other lands. She explains that lower spirits live in small places or objects and exist as long as the objects they inhabit exist, and he says that there are spirits in other sources too, but they are not connected with them in any way, and he explains that she seemed to say something similar in general. Nagoro Kaido explains that people are poor at this and can rarely distinguish between the higher and the lower, but he understands what is said. He thanks her for the valuable information, says that he recently began living in the estate as a pet and is very pleased to meet Milady, and she explains that the Supreme Being is the spirit of the wind, and Clarissa and the others are the spirit of the source. Nagoro Kaido says that he is a pet, and she is surprised by the cat's politeness and explains that this place has become the fortress of the Demon King and evil gods, without noticing it, and asks what kind of creature can make a pet out of him, suggesting that maybe a deity came down to them from the moon. He says that the owner is a girl named Clarissa, an ordinary person and a sweet aristocrat, and he wonders what kind of deity is from the moon. He explains that Clarissa was definitely an ordinary person, and Nagoro Kaido explains that he is an ordinary cat and people like to have cats. He says that many cats behaved this way in his past life, and he explains that cats who consider people servants are not mistaken in the hierarchy. Nagoro Kaido says that he is kind, sweet, and values the people dear to him, and she is surprised that he can summon cat monsters and has the blessing of the wind spirit, explaining that he does not need to become a demon lord or a human lord, to which he explains that one can say that either way. He explains that judging people by their characteristics alone is wrong, but Stella is not dangerous, and warns that those who give in to power will be destroyed, citing the words of his master. He explains that his master is his grandfather who taught him fishing, and explains that if you pull the rod too hard, the line can break, but he changed the lesson a little. Nagoro Kaido says he may be strong, but he plans to live his life as a simple cat, and she explains that it sounds reasonable. He says that he can use his strength to enjoy life and allows her to be free, and she explains that she imagined animals differently as the strongest and is surprised by his strength. Nagoro Kaido explains that in the wild, animals struggle to survive, but his strategy is markedly different, and she explains that she learned to speak. He says he's just here to lie down and isn't going to hurt anyone, and she's glad the demon invasion hasn't started. Nagoro Kaido says that fortunately they haven't been here yet, and explains that his spirit friend told him that they might attack soon. She says that the attack of demons is a huge problem for the whole world, explains that spirits are not their target, but if the earth is drawn into a war, the lower spirits will disappear along with the destruction of the environment. She says that all they can do is give up and accept their fate, and Nagoro Kaido says that this sounds very terrible. He asks if she knows about the demon army, and she explains that it's a remote country that people don't think about, but most people fight them regularly all over the world. Nagoro Kaido explains that the fighting stopped once, but until some country angers the demons, he doesn't want to get involved, although he needs to learn at least something for the sake of his peaceful life. He says he can, but asks if she's really that interested, and she asks him to tell her more. Nagoro Kaido says that demons are very scary and wants to prepare for the worst, and she explains that she is more afraid of him than demons and says that the stone cat was scary, and at first she thought it was the Demon King. She explains that the Demon Lord's army is on good terms with the beasts and beastmen, and also explains that several of the commanders are beastmen and the Demon Lord's chief advisor, which surprises him. Nagoro Kaido says that demons aren't such bad people, and she explains that demons often exploit monsters, but have good relations with beast men and treat humans differently. He explains that demons are considered fragile toys that are harder to break, and another says that some demons don't care about humans, after which he wonders if that's a bad thing. Nagoro Kaido explains that demons are far fewer in number than humans, and their first child inherits the parent's magical powers, and they become weaker after the child is born, and he believes that the beetle colony in the forest nearby is of no concern. She explains that the demon lord's army only invades when the demons are deeply offended or hurt, so they have a hard time maintaining their numbers, don't need a lot of territory, and don't form large groups. Nagoro Kaido explains that the invasion is a punishment for venting their anger, and notes that their anger can even reach them. He says that he hopes that the demons will not interfere with the construction of the tomato hegemony, and explains that this needs to be thought about, and then asks if these are really demons. The cat says that Mr. Rise is busy with work and he heard about the demon lord and his army, and the girl explains that she would like to know more about them. She speaks well and explains that she doesn't know much about them herself, and Nagoro Kaido reassures himself that if he runs away, he won't be able to find out anything. He explains that demons live in the far west, their lands are called the Ormus region, and explains that there are not so many of them to call an entire state, but neighboring countries fear them because of their undeniable power. She says they don't look like humans, and he explains that they have wings and claws and other features, and they can be called humanoid. She explains that according to scientific theory, the survivors of the magical kingdom were wiped out several hundred years ago, and he says that she knows little. At first, people tried to create a demigod and an immortal magician. The experiment was half successful. The results caused a rebellion, and thus a race of demons appeared, which became powerful and frightening to humanity. Nagoro Kaido explains that demons were humans and their children inherit their parents' magical power, while the parents lose it, and the girl says that Stelma said the same thing. She explains that the strongest demon lord armies are the eldest demons, called pure-blood demons. She explains that elder demons have younger siblings who are also strong and that it is actually very difficult to find a weak demon, and Nagoro Kaido is surprised and asks, that is. He explains that pure-blooded demons and their relatives are so powerful that if you offend one of them or those close to them, retribution will follow, capable of burning cities and countries. He says that people tend to treat them more like a natural disaster, and she explains that many demons can use teleportation magic, and thank God there is a huge distance between them and people. He explains that with the help of ley lines they can move around the world, and if the time comes for retribution, then even their land will not be safe. Nagoro Kaido says that even his paws are sweaty and explains that this is bad. He shouts that he drinks beer. Nagoro Kaido says he found a great place to relax, explains that he doesn't drink much and doesn't mind a watered-down Carlos. He says that having a little drink and snack is great and tells you that he has some tasty treats today, but it's better not to give that to a real cat. Nagoro Kaido reveals that he has a resistance to chocolate and onions. He is not afraid of food, but after learning about demons, he needed to relax, so he drinks strong alcohol. He says that if they are unlucky, they might end up in a war, and she explains that the chances are slim, but there is a problem with the demons attacking and no one will rule the defeated. Nagoro Kaido says that some people think it's bad that people don't fall under the control of demons, but she explains that in fact there have been many cases where people started fighting over lands. He says that demons don't listen to international treaties and that people are like prey to them, and he explains that this was to be expected. Nagoro Kaido explains that the demons are unlikely to be able to fight anyone, and their invasion will be a great opportunity for other countries to take over the land, which will lead to a new war after the demons leave. She explains that the balance of power was disrupted. Humans began invading their neighbors. The country lost its only grain region and nearly died of starvation, and the demonic invasion marked the beginning of the country's downfall. She explains that the Riedelheim family survived the demon attack on the kingdom of Nelk, where her great-grandfather received the title of Baron for his distinction in battle, and he is surprised. She explains that the Riedelheim family became aristocrats thanks to demons, then received the title of Viscount and the king granted these lands, and he explains what Rise the Third means. Nagoro Kaido explains that the demon invasion brings chaos from which change is born, and suggests that some people, such as nobles or neighbors, might be glad of such an invasion if the attack was not directed at them, and the girl says that not many people can say that because they too can. He explains that a baron in this world is someone close to the village headman or city mayor, who governs a small town or village and is subordinate to another aristocrat, but Mr. Rise does not have any barons under his command due to his small territory, and that often a settlement is not governed by an aristocrat. Nagoro Kaido says that Rise is not one of those who needs extra connections, and explains that if they manage to arrange a marriage, it will be very important and in general the song. The man explains that he will not force Clarissa into marriage and that she must choose her own husband, and he says that he believes that he will be very angry if someone hurts his daughter. She explains that for a quick career advancement, the demon invasion is manna from heaven, and Nagoro Kaido says that he is sleepy because of too many thoughts. She laughs and suggests that Luke get some sleep, and he explains that he ended up giving in to sleep along with her and believes that the chances of an invasion are slim, so it's best to continue gathering information. He says that it is some kind of snake with 12 wings and even such a nasty thing flies. He explains that it is a bird with a big beak and it is not particularly interesting. He says that it is some kind of big bird with wings and that is understandable. He tells that they have a man with bat wings, and Nagoro Kaido is surprised, noticing this man approaching and asking to wait a second. He says he's just a cat, and when he wakes up he licks himself and then explains that he's pretending to be asleep. He apologizes. The cat says that he has a pleasant voice and does not want to ignore it. Wilhelm La Courton explains that he is the third child of the Courton house and asks if the cat is Mr. Kaido. The cat is surprised that he knows his old name. The cat explains that since he introduced himself, he won't answer rudely and says that he's glad to meet you. The cat explains that his name is Luke, not Kaido, and asks what brings Wilhelm, who is surprised and admires the talking cat, comparing him to Arcane. Nagoro Kaido is surprised by the existence of another talking cat, and he explains that Arcane is the name of a hero from his homeland who looked like a cat. He explains that he hasn't met the creature personally, but his teacher traveled with him and he appears from another world and sealed the evil god, while he explains that Rise mentioned this and it seems to be true, and he is surprised that the teacher is hundreds. He says Mr. Luke. He apologizes for coming unannounced and explains that the wind spirit directed him to Nagoro Kaido, who is surprised and remembers that he promised to repay his savior and cannot break his promise. He says that it is not worth sitting on the ground and offers to sit next to him, and he thanks him for this and agrees to talk. Nagoro Kaido says the drink is quite sweet and comments on its pleasant appearance, and he thanks and tries it. He says that there is a mysterious atmosphere around him and his red eyes emphasize aristocracy and danger, but he says that such an appearance is typical for shoujo manga or otome games and is not to his taste. Nagoro Kaido asks how he knew it was Kaido, and he explains that he felt a huge magical power from the stone cat and that's why he guessed. While Nagoro Kaido notes that the stone cat stands out a lot and because of this it is easy to spot, so he needs to be careful. He asks what he wanted to talk about and he explains that the thing is, he tells that his sister got lost while using teleportation magic and has weak magical power, so the wind spirit advised him to find him and ask for help, and Nagoro Kaido is surprised that the wind spirit could not find her and asks if that means she got lost, and wonders if he is in a good relationship. He explains that it is difficult for higher spirits to identify people because they are usually distinguished by titles, and those who do not have a title are considered ordinary beings. Nagoro Kaido says that he has the title Miracle Worker, but he doesn't understand what it means and explains that he wouldn't call his titles titles, and also notes that it's better not to mention other titles. He says we need to see Wilhelm. Wilhelm La Courton explains his characteristics, magical skills, special abilities, and title as a demon aristocrat. Nagoro Kaido explains that his sister is young and has poor magic skills, so it is difficult for spirits to distinguish her from ordinary people, and he notes that the demon is not a purebred, but a talented magician. He says he will do everything he can to help, and he is surprised, asking if it is true. Nagoro Kaido says that he is indebted to the wind spirit and sees no reason to give up on searching for the lost child, and he thanks him for his help and asks if Nagoro Kaido is sure what he needs to look for here and how far he has to go, after which Nagoro Kaido notices a magic mirror. He explains that the map shows ley lines and their locations and teleportation magic moves along them, so she must be somewhere nearby, and the cat says that they will have to cover a long distance. Nagoro Kaido explains that the estate and nearby towns are marked on the map as small dots. and also talks about the territories of other nobles and the captured mountains. He explains that he knows how scary it is in the mountains at night and tells her that he has been looking for his sister all day, and then suggests that they immediately go look for her and use magic. Nagoro Kaido asks what his sister looks like and if she has anything with a scent, and he explains that he didn't bring anything like that with him. He explains that the girl has black hair like his and high-quality clothes, so she stands out from the crowd, and the cat wonders if this is enough. Nagoro Kaido explains that imagination is very important for cat magic and that he is glad he trained with the stone cat. He says that now he will need something fast and in large quantities. Then he explains the spell of cat magic of search cats, and the man is surprised. Cats jump and play in clouds of fluff, surrounded by the sounds of soft flapping sounds. Nagoro Kaido screams, and he explains that the target is a girl with black hair and a black aristocratic outfit. He explains that numbers are key in finding lost people, so he created thousands of weak-winged cats for Operation Woolly Detective Agency to search everything around. He asks what kind of magic it was, and Nagoro Kaido explains that it is a special magic for finding lost things, which will notify as soon as someone is found. He is surprised that you can command your magical power without casting spells, and he explains that he doesn't understand the basics of magic and is surprised by the number of cats he has created that can't fight. Nagoro Kaido is surprised that they have already been found and explains that he senses which direction they are about 20 kilometers away. Then he shouts. He tells him to go that way. The cat explains that the spell worked, turns the stone cat into a flying cat and says that he can fly on it, and he is surprised and notices that he is still shocked. He says that the wind cat will carry him and encourages him to move forward. The text says that the action takes place in about 10 minutes. Nagoro Kaido says it looks like it and he asks why she's here. He explains that if you let the cat run faster it will be noticeably faster, but now is not the time to think about it. He says that Wilhelm was flying at the same speed as him, and the cat notices the ruins where people lived several hundred years ago. Nagoro Kaido calls out to Frederica, noticing her near the kittens, and she is surprised by his appearance and explains that she looks older than Clarissa, does not look like Wilhelm and could be his twin. He tells Frederica that he's glad she's okay. Nagoro Kaido says it's a wonderful reunion and he's also glad to see she's okay, and he's surprised. He notices a strong blow and asks if Wilhelm is in pain, and the man asks his brother to let him go, explaining that he is annoying and calls Frederica sweet, and the woman says that she already asked him to let her go and accuses him of being deaf. He thanks her for her help and asks Frederica to thank the cat who found her, and she is surprised, asking if this is really necessary. Nagoro Kaido explains that he is the pet of the local Viscount Luke and is familiar with the spirit of the wind, so he decided to help find Lady Frederica, and she explains that this is so. He explains that he uses cats as familiars and asks where the main body is. He says that he is an ordinary cat, and she says that ordinary cats do not speak and accuses him of lying. He reflects that his brother would hardly have enough brains to check this and suggests. Nagoro Kaido is surprised, and the woman asks what happened and explains that it is a magic circle, and the man says that everything is ready for teleportation and asks if she is sure. He says he's lost in thought, and she's surprised. She is surprised that they plan to kidnap her, and he explains that it was a simple teleportation with the help of tools that sent her to their estate. Nagoro Kaido explains that Frederica wanted to thank him and invited him over, but he says there's no need to thank him. The woman asks Luke to give up his role as a pet to people and promises a decent life, and he explains that he is indebted to others and wants to do something here first. She says it's clear and explains that there's nothing that can be done about it then. She says that they will always be glad and will be waiting if they want to look in on them, and he explains that the spell directs to a specific point, so Lady Frederica will definitely get home. Nagoro Kaido explains that if a certain point is missing or the tool is not adjusted correctly, an accident can occur. He explains that the key to the manor allows him to place a magic circle on the ley line to teleport to the manor, but it is a one-time use, and he is surprised that they actually give him such a key. He explains that it is a gift as a token of gratitude and can be used in an emergency to get to their estate, and Nagoro Kaido is surprised. He explains that when a pattern appears near the ley line, you need to open the lid and pour in mana to automatically start the process. He says that his sister teleported in the same way, and he doubts the one-time use and value of the lock connected to the demon lair. He says they have helped him a lot, explains that he is pursuing a selfish reason, and says that he would like to see them again. Nagoro Kaido says it would be rude to just refuse and agrees to take it, and the man thanks Mr. Luke for finding his sister and calls him a savior. He explains that his sister put on a strong front but had a terrible experience and he felt she was very afraid. Nagoro Kaido says goodbye and says that they sorted things out without any problems, and he explains that the forest at night is dark, lonely and scary. He says that we need to go back, but he explains that he can't. Nagoro Kaido tells him that he is preparing for the trip, and he listens. She is surprised and asks if it is a cat. She tells Luke that they wanted to give him something, and the cat asks if they wanted to give him something. She says that at first they thought about a collar, but they made a bracelet that would fit the cat better, and the cat admires the magnificent bracelet and calls it beautiful. She explains that it is the crest of the Riedelheim family, and Nagoro Kaido explains that the bracelet is made from the skin of an animal named Mado. It is explained that family crests in the Kingdom of Nelk are given to families of viscounts and above. Families of barons do not have crests, and the choice of the pattern of the royal flag is connected with the magic of darkness and light. Nagoro Kaido says the bracelet looks cool and the material is soft and lightweight, and doesn't hinder movement at all. He thanks Lady Clarissa for the gift and promises to take care of it, and Lady Clarissa says that the gift is very becoming and suggests taking another one. Nagoro Kaido explains that Lady Clarissa recommended work clothes to him, and is surprised that they are work clothes. He says that he was picking tomatoes and didn't think that someone would make clothes for a cat. He puts it on, and the girl asks if he can try it on, and she agrees, after which he asks how the clothes fit. Lady Clarissa tells Luke that he is so cute and she loves him, and he explains that cat clothes sound good. Nagoro Kaido says that many aristocrats have cats and that a new fashion could start because of him. Then he says that he needs to talk to a tailor, and Luke greets Nagoro Kaido. The old man says that he is Dark's local gardener and that instructions on growing tomatoes are passed on through him, and he says that the hat knitted for Lady Clarissa suits him. The man explains that he is an important ally in building the tomato hegemony and the best in his profession, and Nagoro Kaido explains that Lady Lilfly does not know how to handle metal and asks if he knows a craftsman who makes metal magical tools. It is explained that the creation of tools is related to the elements. Lady Lilfly has a predisposition to water, so she is good at creating magical water and perfume, which replenishes magical power and is expensive. The man explains that working with metal requires an affinity for fire and earth, and Nagoro Kaido says that to place an order you need to go to the master, who is far away and busy. He explains that he wanted to make a metal container for storing and transporting food, and says that he wants to make canned food. The man says that the cans are only good for food for a while, and Nagoro Kaido explains that he needs a tool for making cans, since canned food and tomato sauce are closer, but the cans are fragile and can break. He explains that the machine uses magical power as a source of energy and creates sterilized metal containers, which will bring the hegemony of tomatoes closer, and explains that even if it is impossible now, his plan may work in the future. Nagoro Kaido explains that this is a project for the future and asks for help, and the man warns that new ideas can lead to failures and the appropriation of results by another aristocrat. Nagoro Kaido agrees. He says that he could find the right person in the encyclopedia, but he doesn't think it will happen quickly, and explains that even Wilhelm, whom he recently met, did not master the element of earth. Nagoro Kaido explains that human resources are extremely valuable and imitation has limits, and the man suggests that there might be a craftsman or apprentice who would like to work for them. He explains that it is difficult to hire an experienced artisan, as they are usually already serving someone, but in the artisan district one can find an apprentice willing to leave the teacher. Nagoro Kaido says that they need to look for students and explains that it's a good idea. He says that talent and skills are important, and the man explains that talented people usually have patrons, and to attract such a person you need a good salary, but this is a rural area and the salary is small, so it will not be easy. He explains that ordinary artisans are men of science who strive to be at the cutting edge of technology, while in every country, skilled artisans often work for high-ranking aristocrats. Nagoro Kaido explains that if it were that simple, Lord Rise would have already found what he needed, and talks about the need to attract candidates with new products, and the man apologizes for not being able to help but receives gratitude. He explains that he needs to go to the capital and use the encyclopedia to find suitable people. He says that he will go to the capital and explains that Mr. Rise will agree when he explains everything, and also that he needs to prepare for the trip to the capital. Nagoro Kaito says he can't understand why she doesn't want to eat, and she explains that she's not hungry. He says that the season of meetings is beginning and he is irritated, but he must fulfill his duty, and also explains that the trip will last about 10 days, but it may be extended. One says that it takes 6 to 8 days to get to the capital, while the other explains that the journey time depends on the weather and the condition of the horses. The man explains that they need to maintain connections, otherwise the whole month will be wasted, and Nagoro Kaito says that he would like to go with them if they don't mind. He explains that he is not against it, but she says that she also agrees, and he says that he understood. Nagoro Kaito doubts whether Lady Lilify can go and asks if she has a cat addiction. The girl says that if Luke goes, then she wants to go too, and he explains that he will go too, even Lady Clarissa. She says that her father will be working and asks who will show her around the capital, and then explains that Sasha will go with her and in the evening they can walk around the city. She tells him that her brother is studying at the academy and wants to introduce him to Luke. And Nagoro Kaito explains that Lady Lilify is very shy and can always rely on her mistress, and decides to become friends with Claude, the eldest son. He asks if everything will be okay if they all eat together, and the man answers with a question. He explains that the main forces will remain in the city, and Nord will handle the basic things, and says that there will be no problems because they will not be passing through the borders, and Nord says that he has far fewer relatives than most. Nagoro Kaito is surprised, and he explains that the fever has claimed many lives among the aristocrats over the past 10 years and has become a serious problem for his family. The story explains that it has been decided to go with the whole family. The girl with him says that they are one step closer to the hegemony of tomatoes, and then the call sounds to go to the capital. Nagoro Kaito says that 2 days have passed since they left the estate. He explains that they are passing through the county seat of True, will stop for the night at the county estate, and explains that he will take the opportunity to introduce Clarissa. He asks if he can go with them. She asks Luke to be quiet, and he says he will go if he is a normal pet cat. Many people went to the capital, 20 knights went with them, Sasha and Yold guard and monitor the surroundings, and several carts are following them. Nagoro Kaito says that he was thinking of offering to fly on the Windcat, but he is not sure that he can handle unexpected problems. He explains that he has prepared medicine and thinks it is right to move on the ground, explaining that he can return on the Windcat if something happens to Clarissa's mother. She says that Count True is his adoptive parent and asks what he is like, and the text explains that the relationship between an adoptive parent and a child is like that of an older and younger person. He explains that Count True is a powerful aristocrat from the military faction who earned a name for his skills in magic in his youth. He is about the same age as the court mage Lucian, and has his own squad of mages. She asks if this is rare, and he explains that it is difficult. He says that there are few wizards in the country, even fewer who can fight, and not every count can afford to keep a whole squad of magicians. Nagoro Kaito is surprised that fireballs and lightning are not flying everywhere on the battlefield, and says that it will be necessary to change the opinion on waging war, and the man explains that he was lucky with Lilify, but viscounts often do not have their own mages and says that squads of mages. He explains that even if they live on your territory, they still need to be hired, and he is surprised, asking in what sense. He explains that the Mages Guild sets the minimum wage and conditions, emphasizing her power, and also tells her that Lilify can work for him or leave for another noble, and that he will not be able to stop her. Nagoro Kaito says that being a wizard is a privilege and explains that other nobles would be happy to have Lilify among them, so it is better not to offend her and fulfill all her requests. He says that finding a mage craftsman in the capital will be difficult, and the man explains that it depends on who you are looking for, and that almost all mages, even artisans, are under the protection of the Mages Guild. He says that no one is interested in the remote area and explains that it is better for a craftsman to work in the capital, where there are more vacancies and opportunities, and Nagoro Kaito agrees. He says that he will have to lure people with desserts from another world, explaining that sweets are his strategic resource, and the man announces that they have arrived. Nagoro Kaito says that the city streets have already amazed him, and the Count's estate seems even more beautiful. He explains that Mr. Rise's estate is large and resembles a palace, and she says that she has never seen anything like it. He notices that everything inside is simple and resembles a Japanese-style temple, and the woman explains that they can rest in the rooms, but they need to move on. Nagoro Kaito says that he will go with them then and starts walking. She calls Luke to her place, and he is surprised and explains that there are no tatami mats here. But the floor is wooden and there is a bed. He says that the metal decorations on the furniture are Japanese style, but also notes that Nagoro Kaido says that this mansion is different from theirs, and she explains that the interior is done in the Shinzaki style. He explains that it is customary to take off shoes here to avoid bedbugs, and that feet in military boots often sweat, which is a logical rule. Nagoro Kaido explains that people from his world clearly worked here. Even the name of the style is Japanese, Western and Japanese styles merged together, but it is still unusual to see something like this. She explains that there are no fireplaces here, but the rooms below are heated by a fire dragon stone, which resonates with magical power and radiates heat for 3 days when magical power is applied. And the man wonders how the smoke comes out then, and she explains that the heat is dispersed by magical instruments with the element of wind. Nagoro Kaido is considering central heating for the Count's family, and she explains that it's technically possible to do something like air conditioning in the heat. She explains that they need a drainage system to cool the air in the summer, but there is no point in spending money on it, and he says that Leafly is delightful, sweet, and knowledgeable. A man tells Lady Lalafi that she needs to change her clothes, and she explains that a mage's robe is not suitable. The man explains that even a mage needs to understand his position and change clothes without objection. Nagoro Kaido is surprised and asks why this is necessary. He says that it is not allowed to spy on a girl changing clothes and explains that Gentleman Luke is retreating. Nagoro Kaido says he'll take a walk in the garden while she changes and asks to call him when he's done. She's surprised, and he remarks that the windows are high and she'll have to go back through the door or ask the windy cat. He says that cat freedom is good and explains that you need to decide where to go. He says the garden is quite large, but there is nothing there except a wide carriage driveway and mostly just grass. Nagoro Kaido explains that it was the same in their estate and explains that it was done so that no one could hide in the garden. He says that Yolda mentioned the importance of security measures against bandits and robbers, and he explains that it would be nice to turn this place into a tomato field, since it would look great. Nagoro Kaido says that nearby you can see barns and vegetable gardens, and also workshops. He explains that he hears the sounds of metal being struck and would like to see, but is afraid that they will get angry with him. He says he doesn't need it and he won't be able to hire a craftsman here anyway, so he has to wait until he gets to the craft district. The cat says that there is nothing left to do then, and he will just sleep and wait, and she calls him a cat. Nagoro Kaido is surprised by the unfamiliar voice and thinks about a young aristocrat with an unusual aura, and she says that it is a cat and could be a magician or a priestess. She is surprised by the word cat, and he explains that he is absolutely a cat and asks why he needs to clarify this. Nagoro Kaido is surprised that she doubts, and she asks if it is a cat. He explains that he perfectly mimics a normal cat thanks to constant sleep, and she says that he looks like a dog and asks where. She apologizes to Luke, introduces herself as Aisha Aquaria and says that it is nice to meet him, and Nagoro Kaido is surprised that she knows Luke's name and specifically called for a response. He asks for forgiveness from Mr. Luke. She is glad to meet you and tells you that her name is Aisha Aquaria and she is a magician. Nagoro Kaido is surprised that she knows his name, and he explains that if she learned it from Wilhelm, she might be connected to demons. He says it doesn't look like it, and she explains that she doesn't know why, but she feels like she's not a demon. Nagoro Kaido says that he is the Riedelheim family's pet and she apologizes for scaring him, explaining that it is because of her ability, and he wonders how she knows about him and thinks that he can't be fooled anymore. He explains that he sees the world in a dream through ley lines during major changes, and tells that he saw the interlocutor in a dream. Nagoro Kaido says that he saw her use cat magic and is surprised that she is a dangerous girl, and she explains that she is not from the magic squad at all. He says that water magic, according to Yold, in which she is an expert, is the favorite student of the court magician Lucian. Nagoro Kaido says that it is clear and explains that Leafly mentioned Aisha, who sees spirits, and the girl is surprised that they also talked about her. He asks what her situation is, and she explains that she is an apprentice of the court mage Lucian and wanted to greet the demigod, hoping to meet Viscount Rise, and he thinks that she is not lying. She says she's happy to finally see him, and Nagoro Kaido wonders how she could know he's a demigod. He notices that her ability works very well and says that she needs to be careful, and the woman explains that she doesn't intend to do any harm. She just came to say hello and didn't want to seem rude or scare him. Nagoro Kaido says that if they just want him to stop them, they can ask, and then asks him to leave him alone. She says that her teacher wanted to meet and asks for some time, but he explains that he doesn't know what is required of him and doesn't like courtiers. She explains that he is the first demigod to walk on Earth and he would like to get her autograph, but he is surprised by such a small thing. He says that he loves cats very much and was happy to meet them. The cat is surprised by the resemblance to Lifley, thinks about the court magician and the possibility of confronting the highest aristocrat. She speaks well. Nagoro Kaido says that he can't make a decision on his own and will discuss everything with the owner, and she understands this. She explains that accepting the invitation as a regular pet would be easier. He says that his owner is Lady Clarissa, and confirms that she is 9 years old and the daughter of Viscount Rise. Nagoro Kaido threatens to scratch him, and she asks for forgiveness and explains that the third princess is 8 years old and can introduce her to her. He says that the teacher warned Aisha not to say stupid things, and she wonders how he knew and asks if he has the gift of clairvoyance. Nagoro Kaido explains that she has the personality of a stupid fool, and she says that her appearance is gorgeous and offers to help, so that she is not mistaken for a stray cat. He says of course he asks, and she thanks him. She says the cat is fluffy and cuddly, explains that he has a high feline strength rating, and tells him that she needs to change something urgently, otherwise she will be kidnapped one day. He says that he brought Lady Aisha. She is surprised, and he explains that since he brought her, he needs to call his father and they will take the reception area in 20 minutes. Nagoro Kaido says that he will see you a little later and thanks her, and she asks if it is bad that she brought her. She explains to Luke that the kingdom's court mages are more important than the viscounts, and explains that Mr. Lucian is the current court mage, and Aisha is his apprentice and will become the next court mage. He explains that she is a big shot, can become a court magician and is higher in the hierarchy than a viscount, and he is surprised that Aisha is too frivolous for such a status. She explains that if her father does not greet her, it will harm his reputation, and he needs to hear business negotiations, and simply inviting her into a simple room is also rude. Nagoro Kaido says that Lady Clarissa is very smart and already knows a lot at 9 years old, and the girl explains that if the court mage knows about the demigod, then it will be more difficult to hide it from her father, so she suggests discussing it with him and asking for cooperation. He explains that Yold realized that his power could be frightening, and she says that she created a whole cure, which is also abnormal. Nagoro Kaido realizes that he must ask Yaisha and the court mage to cooperate with him, and the man explains that he came as soon as he was called and notices the court mage's apprentice, despite the fact that Mr. Rise continues to turn a blind eye and say nothing. He explains that Lady Aisha has a special ability that allowed her to know who he is, and the other asks what else she knows. He explains that he didn't tell her and thinks that she's not just admitting her situation, and the man says that he was also upset when he found out about his status, and Nagoro Kaido agrees that sometimes you have to come to terms with the fact that your status doesn't depend on you. He tells Luke that he will allow something to be said. Nagoro Kaido says he believes the other man's words, but he had 3 theories about the origin of his power, explaining each of them in detail. He is surprised and asks if there is a correct theory. Nagoro Kaido says he's amazed and only learned about himself after the assessment, and the man explains he can't believe he got so close to the truth. He says that a higher being told him about something like this and he didn't think that he would become a demigod, and the other explains that he doesn't need to fall at his feet. Nagoro Kaido explains that considering he's a demigod, this is even stranger behavior. She says that everyone knew he wasn't an ordinary cat and explains that the problem is Aisha, and he asks what if the royal family tries to take him away. He says he doesn't think they need to worry about it, and Nagoro Kaido explains that he doesn't think the royal family is that tyrant and confirms this. He explains that the court mages are not stupid enough to incur the wrath of a demigod, and warns that if Luke gets angry, he could wipe the entire country off the map, and he is surprised that he exaggerated too much. He explains that he is a non-warrior type demigod, and the other says that he believes in Yold more than his modesty and asks Luke for forgiveness. Nagoro Kaido explains that, given her ability to create desserts, they want to seduce her, and she is surprised that they want to buy her with delicious food and beautiful women. She tells Luke that she won't let him go anywhere, and he explains that he has no intention of going anywhere. He explains that he surprisingly doesn't want to be taken away, as he's used to Riedelheim's, and the other says it's up to him and suggests he get interested in getting a title or territory, after which Nagoro Kaito explains that he's not interested. He says that even if he gets the title, he doesn't know how to communicate like that, and is surprised at how funny it will look when he controls the entire territory with his paws. Nagoro Kaito says that now that he knows who he is, he doesn't know what to do, and suggests that they start calling him Great Luke. But the cat asks not to call him that, explaining that he's just a pet, and the man explains that the cat doesn't like that kind of treatment either, and the girl understands why he found a common language. He explains that he didn't want to be an aristocrat, but his wife pressured him into becoming one for the family's financial well-being. He explains that the man is completely under his wife's thumb and always obeys her, and Yolda is in the next room just in case, and he tells that there are empty rooms on both sides of the meeting room for the owner's protection, and the cat notices that the walls are thinner than he thought. He asks if Yolda's wife has her own sewing workshop, and she confirms and says that Lilfi's dress was made there. Nagoro Kaito says that this is the first time he's seen her in a dress and that she's already beautiful, but in a dress his heart beats faster. He invites her in, she explains that it is Lilfly and asks permission, and he applauds standing next to the girl in the dress. Nagoro Kaito explains that a door with a knocker seems strange. She apologizes for being late and asks if Lady Aisha has arrived. He admires her appearance and admits that he literally devours her with his gaze. She says she has beautiful, long eyelashes, explains that only her shoulders are exposed, which is modest but stirs the imagination, and says that her pale blue dress highlights her pink hair. Nagoro Kaito is surprised by his words. The woman explains that her blush and sexy look are arousing, and the man says that there is no need to thank him, and the woman explains that a dress has been prepared for him. He muses that Mr. Rise has reasons for taking her along, and the man thanks her for going with him, considering that she doesn't like to appear in public. He explains that Viscount Rise and Lady Lilfly are nieces, both of whom lost their families to illness, and she needs the quiet life of a mage because she has a hard time socializing, and the cat is surprised that she will be appearing in public for the first time. Nagoro Kaito says that this is already exciting and something bad could happen, explains that the dress really suits her, and says that she definitely should have worn such a sexy dress. The woman says that Lady Aisha has arrived, and he explains that he would have kept an eye on Lady Lilfy for another 3 months. But it is time to meet Aisha. He and she listen as Aisha Aquilia says she is glad to meet them, thanks them for their time, and introduces herself as a senior researcher at the Royal Magical Institute. Nagoro Kaito says that he didn't suspect that she could be like this from their first meeting, and explains that she is polite, reliable, and a senior researcher with a high position. Rise Riedelheim is pleased to meet him and explains that the girl on the right is his daughter Clarice, and the other is his niece Lalafi, who is a mage. Nagoro Kaito notes Mr. Rise's serious voice, and she tells him that she knows Luke. Her teacher wants to meet him in person and invites everyone to the castle. She says that she was sent with an invitation and offers to pass it on if they have a lot of work, and he is surprised that this is definitely an invitation and not a threat. Nagoro Kaito explains that they accept the invitation, and he explains that they have no choice, and explains that an ordinary viscount would not be able to refuse the invitation of a court magician. He explains that he belongs to the military faction and would not like to go without permission, and she says there is no need to worry. The man says that he already spoke with the guardian and explains that he kept Mr. Luke's secret, and the girl says that she heard about a new type of vegetable and wants to take a sample. Nagoro Kaito thinks that this is another step towards the hegemony of tomatoes, and the man thanks her for this. She invites Viscount Rise to discuss something serious. She explains that she and the teacher will only act in the interests of Mr. Luke and asks if he understands why. He asks because he is a demigod, and she explains that it is true. Nagoro Kaito is surprised, asking who the demigods are, and the man explains that he doesn't understand it and understands little in general. The girl tries to answer. She explains that this may be due to the fact that demigods do not obey laws. She says that she is the only one who read in Mr. Lucian's book and explains that in their family they know who demigods are, and he is surprised that demigods do not obey the laws. Nagoro Kaito is surprised that even God and the country are willing to forgive him for stealing vegetables, and does not believe that he can commit such a crime. He explains that Luke Cat does not obey human laws, and she explains that these are laws determined by the gods, not by people. He says that the gods make the rules and people, Animals and other creatures obey the laws set by the gods. Nagoro Kaito explains that his teacher wrote this, and the man is surprised that the gods establish laws, and explains that he doesn't quite understand what laws he's talking about. She explains that he doesn't need to know the laws they don't obey, and that they ignore all possible and impossible rules. Nagoro Kaito says he heard about the rule that the hound Cecil obeys and is surprised that he doesn't see this rule, which proves his demigod status. He explains that the rules established by the gods are called the laws of nature. Nagoro Kaito explains that when water is heated it becomes hot, then steam, and when it is cooled it turns into ice, and that the law of boiling and freezing of water is used for this. He explains that in another world water can turn into ice when heated, but in his world the laws are different. Perhaps there are worlds with other laws, which is part of his teacher's research. She explains that many worlds with different laws exist simultaneously. Our universe is just a grain of sand in an endless desert, and asks if this is clear, but Nagoro Kaito doubts and admits that it is difficult to explain to an unprepared person. He explains that the water is heated according to an established law and he cannot change it, and the girl is surprised and asks if there is a way to make the water hot without a temperature source. Nagoro Kaito is surprised that she's talking about copying now, explains that this skill is really cheating and can bypass the rules, and the girl says that it's written all over Mr. Luke's face. He explains that the powers of demigods vary and have limits, but are capable of miracles that are beyond the reach of others, and tells that a demigod can ignore the laws of the world and even end the world. Nagoro Kaito explains that he can't do that now. His ability is good at food and farming, and he says that he only needs sleep, not a force to be reckoned with. He understands what she wants to say and asks what they are going to do with Luke, and the man explains it. She says that it is a good question, and Nagoro Kaito explains that the correct answer is to follow the will of the demigod, because angering the demigod could lead to the destruction of the world. She explains that her teacher and she have a precise goal, to become protectors and servants of Master Luke and the Riedelheim family, hiding them from the unwanted attention of the aristocrats and being their allies in Fortress Wall, and he says that he did not think of leaving, although she probably. He explains that the royal family will want to take the demigod away because the Viscount's family won't be able to handle it, and he thought that's exactly how it would be, but she says that they won't be able to take on so much and he alone might not be able to handle it. Nagoro Kaito explains that he wants to build a relationship of mutual trust with the Riedelheim family, and he says that it is nice to hear and asks what benefit this will give them, since they will not get anything. She explains that it is enough for them that their world survives, they do not need the wrath of a demigod, and that the gods have sent a messenger, and how they treat him will determine the gods' attitude towards them. She says that if they are considered unworthy of existence, he explains that the gods do not think so, and if he dies, they will rather laugh at him. He explains that they don't really care about the fate of people and says that they should have teamed up with the Shooting Star Bears, and she says that she would have said something similar. Nagoro Kaito says that the wrath of the gods does not exist and agrees that it is not worth the risk, and she explains that she told him about the teacher's opinion and if necessary, they will personally intervene. She says she'll see you at dinner and asks to let me know if she needs anything else. Nagoro Kaito explains that everything is too convenient and it is suspicious, and the woman remains silent. She says that cats can be trusted because they understand demigods better, and asks Luke for his opinion, and he replies that they can be trusted but not too much. Nagoro Kaito reveals that he was secretly reading an encyclopedia while she was talking, and he explains that it's not exactly that bothers him. She didn't lie at all and says that they will really act in his interests, but something still worries him, and he says that in the kingdom there is now a struggle between the heirs to the throne. Aisha and the court magician support the second Prince Riolet, and the faction of the third Prince Lawrence plan. Nagoro Kaito explains that if he is against it, the offer might be rejected, but he wants to talk to Master Lucian, and at the same time he reflects that if he spends too much time in the castle, he might get drawn into local squabbles. He says that Aisha is an experienced mage and it would be nice to have such allies, and he explains that there is a constant struggle for power in the palace and he would not like this to cause problems, to which the man explains that in the capital no one cares about the Viscount in the countryside and they need a sample of help. Nagoro Kaito says that the Riedelheim territory is indeed famous now, but he fears that over time it may become more developed and famous. The man says that the others are interested in her and not them and asks Lilfley if she wants to meet Master Lucian. Lilfley explains that she doesn't know what to say and is a little worried about her. He notices this and the other man calls Lilfley by name. She explains that she taught herself magic using the textbook of Master Lucian, whom she greatly respects as a mage and considers her idol, and Nagoro Kaido understands that he must be more careful as a pet. She says that something still bothers her. The man explains that she will still have to go to the capital, and the girl with the cat explains that she needs to think things through more carefully. He says so, against the backdrop of a lamp and a building. He tells Viscount Rise that while they are traveling to the capital, he needs to know something. He says that the crown prince suffered from a fall from a horse in early spring and is still unconscious and has not recovered, and another confirms this. He explains that there are rumors in the royal palace about his death, and another says that he is now breathing only thanks to a magic circle, but will soon die and healing magic will not help. He explains that the second prince, Riolette, is smart but too soft and was born from a concubine, so he is unlikely to be crowned without problems, and the third prince, Laurens, born from the queen, is only 10 years old. He explains that his majesty is now also ill and bedridden. The man explains that they are members of the crown prince's faction and care about the future of the kingdom, but cannot ignore the wishes of the third prince, and the woman explains that the second prince also has support and expected to be asked to support the second prince. The man explains that they needed a new vegetable and their help is not needed or they are just waiting for the right moment, and the other man says no. He explains that Lady Aisha is more interested in research than politics and warns that the court mage's invitation should not be ignored, while the man explains that mages often act impulsively and would like Lucian to be more serious. He explains that if he has to choose between the second or third prince, he will do as His Majesty wishes, and the other talks about the possibility of His Majesty's death without leaving a last will. He says that he considers the second prince, Riolette, too young and does not want a bureaucratic puppet to sit on the throne. He says he doesn't want to stir up discontent, and the old man explains that he's ready to side with Lawrence, but wants to avoid civil war at any cost and doesn't care who takes the throne. It is explained that the struggle for power will reshape the kingdom, and many incompetent aristocrats will take advantage of this opportunity. And there will also be those who are dissatisfied with the current situation and want to create chaos. He explains that the winners will take the territories of the losers, and this has happened many times, then explains that in history books such events were called the rise and fall of power, but in the current situation the state cannot be allowed to weaken, after which he says that he will be careful in the capital. He says he knows almost nothing about the princes and asks if they are ambitious enough to fight for the throne, and the other explains that they are not. He says that the third prince is too young, and the woman explains that the root of all the problems lies with the third prince's mother. He explains that the second prince was not initially interested in the throne, but after the death of the crown prince, he will be drawn into a power struggle. And she explains that the third prince's mother is afraid of losing influence if she does not put her son on the throne. The man explains that the second prince doesn't get along with her at all, and the other man says that it's clear. A man asks who's there after hearing a knock on the door, and Nagoro Kaido peeks around the corner and meows. The man tells him that Clarissa is his pet, asks if he has eaten, calls him to him, and explains that as a child he had a cat that he loved so much that he was unable to get a new one after it died. He says that you can tell from the cat's eyes that it is very smart, and the man explains that Clarice found it in the garden and denies that anyone gave the cat to her. The man says the cat doesn't look like a stray, and Nagoro Kaido explains that stray cats usually don't like people, but he's calm and doesn't look stern. The man says that as a cat lover he feels he is smart and won't be surprised if he speaks their language, and then asks him to keep an eye on the cat and not lose him in the capital. He explains that he would like to continue the conversation, since the court magician invited them, and says that he can convey a message from the interlocutor. The man explains that if he writes a letter, he is unlikely to read it, so it is better to forget it, and then asks to understand his intentions and discuss the danger of the current situation. She says that it will definitely not be possible to talk about politics with Lady Aisha, and he explains that Lord Lucian is as cunning as a raccoon. The man explains that the cat's body shape resembles a raccoon and that since ancient times, myths have indicated that raccoons often disguise themselves as people, and also asks if a person can pretend to be a cat. He asks how the raccoon is and says that he has never met him, but thought that he was not interested in politics, and the other explains that the raccoon is almost not interested in politics, but has the endless curiosity of a true researcher, often putting research above all else, although this does not go beyond the bounds of logic, and The man explains that the mage is rational to the core, but he is more concerned about the faction of the third prince's mother, and the other man is surprised, asking in what sense. He explains that she puts emotion above logic and might hire an assassin for the second prince if the situation gets out of hand. And Nagoro Kaido says that Lord Lucian might already be planning something to prevent this and asks to confirm his departure in 2 days. He explains that he needs to visit Viscount Rucola and then go to the capital, and asks Rise to gather information, warning him to be careful, after which Rise thanks him for the advice and reveals that the cat's name is Luke. Nagoro Kaido says he'll visit Luke again someday, and the cat purrs. Luke asks what he was trying to achieve. He explains that first he treated Sasha to a new dish, then Clarice and Lipfi showed up asking for sweets, and then he decided to get to know Count True better. He explains that it is clear that he played the role of a cat well, although he is a cat. Nagoro Kaido explains that Count True has no doubts about his feline nature and has become more confident, and the man says that he was a little scared by the conversation, but he does not think that everything will be so bad, and explains that he knows almost nothing about the second prince, but if the mother of the third prince is a slave. He says that they are keeping their distance from both factions, so for now they will just be observers, and admits that there is a danger but they can only watch. Nagoro Kaido says he knows almost nothing about the current situation in the country, but would like to avoid starting a fire using the knowledge in the encyclopedia, and is amazed by the cat's strength. He explains that he has lower physical strength than Rise, but good magical power, and he is a person who can be relied on. Nagoro Kaido suggests starting dessert. The man greets Yold, he asks if he can join in, and the girl asks her father if he has a hatch. She says that today's dessert will be lighter and they will eat sorbet, and the man explains that ice cream and sorbet can be served in a waffle cone, and he says that he made a spoon out of a waffle so as not to dirty the dishes. Nagoro Kaido says it's a flower pastry with a beautiful pattern, but he explains that what's important is what's inside the cone, and muses on mass production and the need to make taiyaki with filling. He says that it's like a family get-together. Nagoro Kaido says that after reincarnation he met a kind hostess and happiness in simple things, and the hostess explains that she will make something warm as an addition. He says that he is having fun living with the Riedelheim family, and talks about Neltig as the capital of the Kingdom of Nelk and the royal arena. He wonders why the second prince is looking at the fight like that, or if it is something else.